6th Kipra Annual Regional Conference, and the theme being accelerating economic growth and development for ourselves in Kenya. Question is, imagine as we are about to officially open the conference, it is quite interesting that it's drizzling. Maybe that is symbolic of a new reawakening of the Asals in Kenya. Because for the longest time, Asals have been associated with luck, but you are saying we have to reimagine things. For a long time, Asal has been synonymous with dryness, but today, as we officially open this particular conference, it's being associated with drizzles of hope. Remember, the hashtag is Kipra Conference 2023. We're about to receive our guest of honor, His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, who is the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. We'll be receiving him shortly, and thereafter, we hand over to the protocol team at the office of the Deputy President. Remember that Kenya is ours, and ours is Kenya. And Asals are ours, and ours is Asals. Well, you can take a photo, post on social media platforms, hashtag Kipra Conference 2023. Follow us across all social media platforms at Kipra Kenya. That is on Twitter, Kipra Kenya, Facebook, on YouTube, where this function is being streamed at Kipra Kenya 2. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. Soon we'll be joining Snapchat. Check out this space. Remember, accelerating economic growth and development for ourselves in Kenya is our theme, and you're expecting our chief guest shortly to arrive right here at Pwani University, Kilifi County 003. As you can see, the air is getting tense by the minute. People are so serious. Everyone wants to look very serious before the Deputy President comes in. So I want to challenge that, yeah?
And we shall endeavor to sort out this problem. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Beatrice Elachi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise to support and to appreciate that we've just passed the budget in this House, Mr. Speaker, and I'm hoping now, especially the expressway that was built, when you look at the drainage, Mr. Speaker, if you are driving under and it is raining, you can cause an accident so easily. So it is time they have to put the right drainage, and they also have to now clear the lower road that they messed up. And Mr. Speaker, when you look at all this, the most important thing we must be looking is that most of the roads that were done, Mr. Speaker, were never marked. And so I'm hoping even as we move and look at where we are having challenges, we are also marking roads so that these accidents that we have and all that must come to an end. So as I support Mr. Speaker, I want to say in Nairobi, as much as people will think there are roads, when you enter now in the real streets of Nairobi, you'll find that there's a lot of challenges of roads and even passage. Whenever there's fire or whenever there's an ambulance that is passing, you'll always find challenges, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, as we look at all the roads, let us also endeavor to ensure drainage and sewer is done together. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Kwame.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the petitioners on the roads which are not really supporting their system there. Mr. Speaker, I'm in the same boat, and I've made noise as a member of parliament. Our people have expressed their concern, and nothing is happening. I wish to register really also my concern about the road in my area. It is a famous one. Even the president himself has spoken several times about it. This is the road from Kadel, Palatu Kanyadhiang. I wish it is taken care of in line with what the president told us. Mr. Speaker, this is a very important concern for our people in Karachuonyo, and I thank you for having given me opportunity to express myself about it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Speaker, and I also wish to support the petitioner, and with the rider that the petitioner petitioned the National Assembly, not the ministry. Why, Mr. Speaker? It is because it is this House that taxes the people. It is this House that legislates on taxing, on how to tax the Kenyan people. It is also this House that legislates on how to appropriate the money. So I think it is time we wake up and ensure that problems such as these are sorted at the level of budget making, so that we do not, after budget making process, Mr. Speaker, is not a ceremony that we just look at it and make noise and fight each other here. It should be a process that ensures all the problems which have been cited by the people of this country are ensured, or we ensure that it is factored in the budget making process in this House, so that, Mr. Speaker, we sort all these problems. Speaker, there has been accidents even in this country. Forget about even those people who are searching for roads. There has been several accidents in this country because of the way roads are made. In countries which have developed, Speaker, roads almost everywhere is dual carriage. There are no accidents, zero accidents. It is also high time this House look at how do we make these roads accident-free and make it possible for the people of this country. I thank you, Speaker.
Member for Kamukunji.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity, and I want to support the petition and the petitioner. And I think it is important to contribute to the construction of our roads. Roads have been an important component of any development process, particularly for major urban centers and some of our rural areas. One thing I have concern with roads is the lack of maintenance. It seems now we have a culture of not bothering about maintenance at all. And this culture is leaving a lot of damaged roads unattended to, and leaving until they are completely worn out or completely collapsed before any investment is done, which is a very higher investment than normal. And I think maybe we should start thinking about maintenance. And I don't know whether this would require an amendment to the various road acts that we have in our country, but it is important that, in fact, we do invest more in our roads. The second point is about petitions. I have been here, this is my fourth time, Mr. Speaker, and petitions normally are not followed up and not executed very well in terms of the final decisions, and many petitions disappear in between. And I think we should look into that, and the House should make sure that those petitions are implemented and executed. Thank you.
Member for Turkana, Nicholas. Give Nicholas the mic.
Thank you, Speaker, for this chance. I rise to support the petitioner and looking on what is stating in his petition. Mr. Speaker, this takes me back to my own constituency, whereby the issue of tarmac roads is just a theory. Even to our students in our schools, in my schools from my constituency, they just read the word tarmac in the books, but seeing it practically, it is a nightmare. So this takes me back to the bill which was passed in this House in the 11th Parliament, that is in 2016, whereby we agreed that all the 290 constituencies to be allocated money for tarmacking the roads. And up to date, a constituency like Turkana East, there is no tarmac, even an inch of a tarmac road in Turkana East. And there is a road, the C1 road, which crosses the my constituency and also connects the county of Baringo. That is the road from Chamalingo Junction, Faikapedo, Napeitom Lokori, then to the A1 road in Lokchar. Mr. Speaker, such a roads, they are supposed to be tarmac for the people there to have a good transport, because road network, it is good for so many development in every area. So I support the petitioner, and I think we petition this House to locate the
Member for Kajiado North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise to add my voice on the petition, as I also thank the petitioners for using the right channel. And Mr. Speaker, it seems we have a very informed society and people, because, Mr. Speaker, they have resulted with what the Constitution allows them to do, Mr. Speaker. Petitioning this House, drawing the attention of members, the Committee on Infrastructure, the Committee on Budget. And Mr. Speaker, equally in my constituency, I have several roads that, Mr. Speaker, were started by the last regime that up to date have not received any funding or have not even started, Mr. Speaker. And this one raises a big question, Mr. Speaker, on the issues of planning. And I want to ask this House, as we consider this petition, let us be good planners, people who plan with the resources at hand, so that we might not end up with borrowing from the back door and also having roads that are incomplete just by the mere fact that we did not plan and we did not use the opportunity to procure the correctly, Mr. Speaker, to put in resources that are enough to complete roads, and so that we have a lot of unfinished projects. I thank the petitioners, but I also draw the attention of this House that we need to do proper planning so that we have roads that start, get completed, Mr. Speaker, and remain to be projects that are used. And continuously, we will have a society that plans well, executes well, and people benefit from the projects that have been approved by this House. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Members, we will stop there. The petition is committed to the relevant committee in the terms that I read out. Honorable members, allow me to acknowledge in the Speaker's Gallery, Chogoria Boys High School from Mara constituency, Tharaka Nithi. In the Public Gallery in Jabini Junior Secondary from Kinangop, Nyandarua. And then Marmanet Secondary School from Laikipia West, Laikipia. On my own behalf and on your behalf, I welcome them to the House of Parliament. Yes, Morgara? If you want to welcome a school from your constituency.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Take
Speaker.
the opportunity to speak for everybody.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I welcome Chogoria Boys High School. It's not in my constituency, but it's a neighboring constituency of Mara in Tharaka Nithi County. One of the best schools in our county, and we are proud of them. I also welcome the students from Jabini and Marmanet. All of them, they feel welcome to the House and follow the proceedings as we do them. These are leaders of tomorrow, the future leaders of Kenya, and mine would be to encourage them to continue working very hard in school, to be disciplined, and always to remember that the motto of the country is education is everything for everyone. So welcome and all the best as you watch our deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Majority Leader. Chepkonga.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah,
This is-
the acting majority leader.
no, the temporary one.
Temporary.
You know, if you say acting, I must be having a letter. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the majority leader, Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Thursday, 22nd June 2023, in the afternoon, this afternoon sitting. 1, the draft charter for Open Universities of Kenya from the University of Education, from the Ministry of Education, Mr. Speaker. 2, the report of the Auditor General and financial statements of road maintenance levy fund for the year ended 30th June 2022, Kenya Urban Roads Authority. 3, reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2022 and the certificates therein. 1, Kenya Railways Corporation. 2, National Housing Corporation. 3, Kenya Civil Aviation Authority. 4, National Oil Corporation of Kenya Limited. And 5, Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Chepkonga. Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Labor, Karemba. Give the mic to Honorable Mchangi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I can hear some members here referring to me as Atuoli, and I wish to state categorically that my name is Mushangi Karemba and not Atuoli. And there is no relationship between me and that cannot be a compliment. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, 22nd June 2023, report of the Departmental Committee on Labor on its consideration of the Public Service Internship Bill, National Assembly Bill number 63 of 2022. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Caroline Ngelechei Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, 22nd June 2023. Report of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security on the vetting of Ms. Ann Njoki Wangombe for the appointment as Principal Secretary, State Department for Performance Management and Delivery Services. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Women Rep Kirinyaga, I give you 1 minute to welcome the delegation from your county. Give Jerry. Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to welcome the delegation from the County Assembly Kirinyaga, led by the Honorable Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the members reminded me that this House promised that we will be looking into the Ward Development Fund so that we can secure and ensure that they are able to do their oversight mandate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Jerry. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Honorable Dorothy Ikiara. Give the mic on. Honorable Dorothy, proceed.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion. That aware that Article 21(3) of the Constitution provides that all state organs have the duty to address the needs of vulnerable groups within the society. Further aware that the Persons with Disabilities Cash Transfer Program, PWSDCT, is one of the 4 cash transfer programs implemented by the government as part of the overall social protection intervention, noting that caregivers undertaking the immense responsibility of providing daily care and assistance to persons with severe disabilities are oftentimes the immediate family members of the PWSD, concerned that this causes disproportionate burden on these families as persons who would otherwise be engaged in gainful employment or other activities to provide for families are limited by these immense responsibilities. Further concerned that this loss of income, opportunities, and resources exacerbates the challenges faced by these families, cognizant that the government ought to take action to recognize the invaluable contribution of caregivers and support them in caring for individuals with severe disabilities. Now, therefore, this House resolves that the government, through the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, recognizes primary caregivers or persons with severe disability as a distinct category requiring social protection and support, and further develops and implement a cash transfer program for these primary caregivers. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mheshimiwa. Ngelechei, Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appointment of the Principal Secretary, the State Department for Performance Management and Delivery Services. That taking into consideration the finding of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security in its report on the vetting of a nominee for appointment of Principal Secretary, State Department for Performance Management and Delivery Services, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 22nd June 2023, and pursuant to the provision of Article 155, 3B of the Constitution and Section 8(1) of the Public Appointment Parliamentary Approval Act 2011 approves the appointment of Ms. Ann Njoki Wangombe as Principal Secretary, State Department for Performance Management and Delivery Services. Thank you.
Thank you, Ngelechei. Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Honorable Anthony Kibagendi. Statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 43.1, I wish to make a statement on the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. It's celebrated every 26th day of June, whose theme this year is People First, Stop Stigma and Discrimination, Strengthen Prevention. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 259A, the Parliamentarians Against Drug and Substance Abuse Caucus was established and received recognition and approval from the Speaker on the 23rd November the year 2022. The caucus is mandated to contribute to the prevention and substance use and other social problems significantly improve the society's health, safety, well-being by receiving and enhancing legislative and institutional frameworks to combat illicit drug abuse. Honorable Speaker, the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking is commemorated by people, nations, organizations, and parliaments across the world in a bid to strengthen action and cooperation to realize a world free of drug abuse. Parliaments in particular have a vital role to play in the fight against drugs and substance abuse. Hence, the need for this House to re-examine already existing legislation in the wake of contemporary issues in the sale of illicit substances, specifically and the online sale of drugs. Honorable Speaker, it is a known fact that there is an upsurge in drugs and illicit substance abuse in the country, and we can see that from our Deputy President, who is one of our biggest campaigners. Members can attest that many young people in our constituency are now more than ever before at the greatest risk of wasting away due to drugs abuse. Many drug abusers face stigma, discrimination, which further harm their physical and mental health, and consequently prevent them from accessing the help they need. To successfully tackle this problem, this House should adopt a people-centered approach in formulating drug-related policies and laws with a keen focus on compassion, human rights, and evidence-based practices. Honorable Speaker, as I present this statement on behalf of Parliamentarians Against Drug and Substance Abuse Caucus, I'm honored to report to this House that the caucus has already embarked on a journey to reinforce the fight against this vice. Further, the caucus is in receipt of an invitation from NACADA to commemorate this day on Monday, 26th June 2023 at the Bomas of Kenya. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, the concerted effort by the current administration, spearheaded by the Deputy President, His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, demonstrates the severity of this menace. It is for this reason that I invite members to join in the fight against drugs and substance abuse by participating in the activities of the day by NACADA and supporting creating awareness. And Mr. Speaker, I'm requesting that we encourage members on that day. I'll be sharing in our group the theme for this year. And Mr. Speaker, I would also like to table the national survey on the status of drugs and substance abuse in Kenya, an abridged version. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well done, Kibagendi. You are actually the first caucus to bring any statement to the floor of the House, and that's commendable. I wish you the best in what you are doing to eliminate the menace of drugs in our society. Next order. Majority Leader, your Thursday statement.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 44.2a, I rise to give the following statement on behalf of the House Business Committee which met on Tuesday, 20th June 2023, to prioritize the business for consideration during the week. As members are aware, this week the House has considered the following bills and other priority budget-related business. 1, the Appropriations Bill, National Assembly Bill number 27 of 2023. 2, the Finance Bill, National Assembly Bill number 14 of 2023. 3, the County Allocation of Revenue Bill, Senate Bills number 16 of 2023. 4, the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill, Senate Bill number 2 of 2023. 5, Supplementary Estimates number 2 for the financial year 2022-2023, and the Supplementary Appropriation Bill number 2 of 2023. Honorable Speaker, the House Business Committee has severally proposed that the sittings of the House be extended to accord the House time to conclude with all stages of these bills and priority budget-related business. I wish to take this opportunity to thank you, all honorable members of this House, for the sacrifice, the active participation, and overall contribution to the improvement of our lawmaking at every stage of the process. Representation of our people and critically exercising our crucial mandate as bestowed upon us by the people of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, in accordance with the provisions of Standing Order 42A, 5 and 6, I wish to convey that the following cabinet secretaries are scheduled to appear before the House to respond to questions as follows. A, the Cabinet Secretary for Water, Sanitation and Irrigation to appear on the afternoon of Wednesday, 28th June 2023 to respond to the following questions. 1, question by private notice number 007 of 2023 by the member for Alego Songa constituency, the Honorable Samuel Atandi MP, regarding the collapsing dikes around Lake Kanyaboli, which have resulted to the flooding of the area and displacement of the people. 2, question number 158 of 2023 by the member for Ikolomani constituency, Honorable Bernard Shinali MP, regarding the implementation of the Moyes Bridge Matunda Water Supply and Sanitation Project. And 3, question number 159 of 2023 by the member for Turkana Central, Honorable Joseph Emade MP, regarding the status of Naoros and Nadoto irrigation scheme in Turkana County. B is the Cabinet Secretary for Labor and Social Protection to appear on the afternoon of Wednesday, 28 June 2023 to respond to the following questions. 1, question number 088 of 2023 by the member for Konoin constituency, Honorable Brighton Yegon MP, regarding the welfare of Kenyans working in Saudi Arabia and efforts geared towards regulated licensing of recruiting agencies. 2, question number 089 of 2023 by the member for Ayata constituency, Honorable Robert Basil MP, regarding incorporation of senior citizens into the Old Persons Cash Transfer Scheme. 3, question number 090 of 2023 by the member for Konoin constituency, Honorable Brighton Yegon MP, regarding formulation policy framework to support children whose parents or guardians are incarcerated. 4, question number 091 of 2023 by the member for Machakos County, Honorable Joyce Kamene MP, regarding the plight of orphans, widows, and widowers in the country. 5, question number 092 of 2023 by the member for Kirinyaga, who is seated behind me, the Honorable Jane Jerry Maina, regarding the effectiveness of Inua Jamii program since its inception. And 6, question number 160 of 2023 by the member for Kiambu constituency, Honorable John Mashua Waithaka MP, regarding eligibility of cancer survivors being registered as persons with disabilities. C, Honorable Speaker, is the Cabinet Secretary for Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development to appear on the afternoon of Wednesday, 28 June 2023 to respond to the following questions. 1, question 084 of 2023 by member for Mwingi Central constituency, Honorable Gideon Muliungi MP, regarding errors in title deeds for parcels of land in Mui Coal Basin. 2, question number 085 of 2023 by the same member, Gideon Muliungi, regarding the high mast security lighting project in Mwingi Town. Question number 086 2023 by the member for Saboti constituency, Honorable Caleb Amisi MP, regarding ownership status of the parcel of land LR numbers 5004/30/R, currently occupied by Kuala International Sugar Company. 4, question number 087 of 2023 by the member for Laisamis constituency, the Honorable Joseph Lekuton MP, regarding review of the boundaries bordering Laisamis constituency. Question number 109 of 2023 by the member for Nakuru Town East constituency, the Honorable David Gikaria, MP, regarding Kazim Taani project phase 3. Question number 117 of 2023 by the member for Embakasi West constituency, Honorable Mark Mwenje, MP, regarding status of ownership of land popularly referred to as MCO in Molem Ward in Embakasi West constituency. And 7, question number 246 of 2023 by the member for Kibwezi West constituency, the Honorable Mwengi Mutuse, MP, regarding delayed payment of compensation to residents whose land was compulsory acquired in 2017 for construction of Kibwezi Kitui Road. Honorable Speaker, in regard to the business for Tuesday next week, the House is expected to consider a special motion on the nomination for appointment as a chairperson of the Commission on Revenue Allocation and nomination for appointment as a member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Debate will also be undertaken on the following business should it not be concluded today. 1, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 16 of 2023. 2, the Statute Law Miscellaneous Amendments Bill, National Assembly Bill number 60 of 2022. 3, report on ratification of the amended Nairobi Convention and the Protocol for the Protection of Marine and Coastal Environment of the Western Indian Ocean from land-based sources and activities. 4, report on ratification of the Kigali Amendment on the Montreal Protocol on the substances that deplete the ozone layer. 5, report on ratification of the Bamako Convention on the ban of the importation into Africa and control of transboundary movement and management of hazardous waste within Africa. And finally, 6, report of the Kenyan delegation to the Parliamentary Dialogue on United Nations Convention Against Corruption, UNCAC, and Global Parliamentarians Against Corruption, GOPAC, Annual General Meeting. Honorable Speaker, the House Business Committee shall reconvene on Tuesday, 27 June 2023 to schedule the business for the rest of the week. And I wish to lay this statement on the table of the House. And my apologies, it was quite a long one today.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Honorable members, the following schools are in the House, in the Speaker's Gallery: Mung High School, Juja in Murang'a. I thought Juja was in Kiambu. Is in Juja in Kiambu? So Mung High School, Juja in Kiambu and not Murang'a. Sekenani Boarding Primary School, Narok West in Narok in the Public Gallery. Shumvi Mixed Day Secondary School, Laikipia North in Laikipia. On my behalf and on your own behalf as a House, we welcome the students and their teachers to the House of Parliament. Next order.
Order number 8, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 16 of 2023, second reading.
Majority Leader. Majority Leader, due to time constraint, how much time do you want us to spend on this order?
Even 40 minutes, Mr. Speaker, if we'll be done, it would be good enough. Maximum an hour.
Go ahead.
Because there is also the other order number 9.
Yes.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the Public Finance Management Bill, National Assembly Bill number 16 of 2023. Honorable Speaker, allow me first to begin by thanking the chairperson of the Public Debt and Privatization Committee, the Honorable Shuria, ably deputized by the Honorable Makali Mulu, who tabled this report of the committee yesterday because we were able to consider this bill. They did public participation, I think, over the last 2 or so weeks, and were able to table a very good report with very good recommendations, and come up even with certain amendments that are critical to the implementation of this bill. Honorable Speaker, the principal objective of this bill, as has been enumerated in the bill, or listed in the bill, first is to amend the Public Finance Management Act of number 18 of 2012 to operationalize the public debt and borrowing with regards to the framework for monitoring the level of public debt to align with the provisions of Article 214(2) of the Constitution, which defines public debt. And this article defines public debt to mean all financial obligations attendant to loans raised or guaranteed and securities issued or guaranteed by the national government. Honorable Speaker, the Public Finance Management Act of 2012 does not offer this clear definition of what public debt is. And it is important, Honorable Speaker, therefore, to define public debt in such a manner that it covers all elements of our public debt, because you could define public debt as just our national government debt without considering what is guaranteed by our national government to our county governments or even to government state-owned enterprises. And therefore, a holistic definition was necessary, and that is part of the objectives of this bill. Two, Honorable Speaker, we are confronted with a situation where we, as a country, and indeed many other countries in Africa and beyond, are confronted with a heavy question of public debt and its management in the running of our economies, Honorable Speaker. And Kenya has been no exception. We have had a situation where we are almost at the brink of being unable to manage our own debt. Should we allow things to go the way they are going without us taking cognizance, one, of the global economy, what is happening in the global economy with the war in Ukraine, with the inflation around the world, both in Europe, in the US, the large devaluation of our shilling against the major currencies, especially the US dollar, which was occasioned, as I mentioned, by inflation being very high in the US. Honorable Speaker, you know they say that when the US's economy coughs, the rest of the world catches a cold. And therefore, we have been no exception. Post-COVID, Honorable Speaker, and you remember in the US, there were a lot of government freebies or money being given to the populace. To an extent, Honorable Speaker, that after the pandemic, there are people in the US who are opting not to work because the kind of welfare monies they were getting from the state was at times even better than what they were getting when they were working. And that has driven inflation very high and occasioned the Fed rate in the US to be increased in a manner that it has not happened, I think, since the Great Recession in the US. And that increment in interest rates, Honorable Speaker, is what you've seen cause the problems we have here today with our dollar, which was trading at an average of about 120 less than a year ago. Today, I think is an average of about 132 to 140 shillings against the dollar for the Kenya shilling. And the Kenya shilling, Mr. Speaker, I must say, has tried to be quite resilient. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, considering that there are all those global effects, we must be very careful how we treat our public debt. And let me thank the committee, because one of the things that were in this bill was a provision, a clause where the National Treasury sought, if they burst the debt ceiling, to come and report to the House post facto, and that is one of the recommendations that the committee has noted and actually recommended. I was trying to get it in the report, Honorable Speaker. Recommended that this should not be a post facto approval by Parliament, because we cannot abrogate our role and our mandate to oversight government, and they come to report to us, because this would be abused, just like Article 223 of the Constitution has been abused, where people spend money and come to report to us after the event. And I think I want to support what the committee has recommended, that should we go beyond the debt ceiling, the debt threshold, Honorable Speaker, and I'll speak to that because that is the second objective of this bill, that should the National Treasury go beyond the debt threshold, then they ought to come for approval from Parliament before busting that threshold. Honorable Speaker, if you allow me to speak to the second objective of this bill, which is to migrate us from the absolute figure of a debt ceiling that we have been using in terms of measuring our debt carrying capacity to a threshold which is popularly or otherwise known as a debt anchor. And the proposal for an economy like ours would be a debt anchor of about 55%, and that is what this bill is proposing, a debt anchor of 55%, plus or minus 5%. And Honorable Speaker, I also do note the committee had observed that plus or minus, that if you are in the negative of 55%, then you are still okay, you are not in the red, and therefore proposed to amend that to remove the minus and just say a threshold of 55% plus 5. Honorable Speaker, I had a discussion with the chair and proposed maybe we need to reconsider that, because the intent, I think by the National Treasury, of saying a threshold of 55% plus or minus is that we are able to signal ourselves, or the country is able to know that if you are at 50%, then you know you are only 5 percentage points to hit your threshold, and therefore be careful even as you appropriate resources and as you plan for your finance bills. You know what amount of resources you need to generate to be able to reduce on your fiscal deficit that will then feed onto the amount of money that you need to borrow. In the same breath, Honorable Speaker, if you are at 55%, you know you have hit the debt threshold that you have placed for yourselves, Honorable Speaker. And anything beyond 55%, moving to 60%, then you're in the red. Currently, Honorable Speaker, as you speak, our debt carrying capacity is sustainable, but at the risk of getting to levels that are unsustainable. And I think that is why the National Treasury and the current administration has purposed that we shall not continue to dig the hole that we are in, because we are already in a hole. We are already past the debt ceiling that we set. If we were to factor in the almost 9.4 trillion shillings that was in the 9.4 trillion shillings that is in debt today, and almost 700, I think, and 18 billion, that is a fiscal deficit that we have budgeted for in the next financial year of 2023-2024. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, if we do not do anything and we continue with the trajectory that we are in, without signals to the economy and even to Parliament itself, that if we have just an absolute figure, and we set the absolute figure of 10 trillion, I think a year ago in 2022, if I remember well, just before the 2022-2023 budget, Honorable Speaker, and it was projected that this would probably take us for another 2 years, but we're already in the red, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the rationale for having an absolute figure, whether it is a 5 trillion shillings, and I think way back in 2014 when I joined this house and found the CPM body in the house, I think we had a figure of 2.5 trillion. And we doubled that to 5 trillion in about 2014, 2015, if I remember well. Then we moved that, I remember in 2018, when I was chairing the budget committee, there was a proposal to increase the debt ceiling to 10 trillion shillings. The budget committee then was of a view that we either revert to the debt anchor that we are now reverting to, so where we are able to measure our debt as a ratio of our public debt in terms of ratios, or we maintain our public debt ceiling at 7.5 trillion shillings up to the year 2024, June 2024. And John Buddy, we remember he was a member of that committee. And we had a heated argument with the National Treasury then, and we actually sat in this chamber. But they did insist that they wanted at least 9 trillion shillings, which we gave them. And John Buddy will recall that 9 trillion shillings was to take us to June of 2024. We are here to get to June of 2024. Last year, they came back to us requesting that we move the ceiling up again to 10 trillion shillings. And I remember many of us opposed that move. And I remember even when I was contributing, I reminded them that 3 years ago, we asked you to move to a debt anchor, something that would be signaling when you are getting into the red. But as it were, Honorable Speaker, nobody listened to us. Today, Honorable Speaker, the National Treasury would have opted to come back to us and ask us again to raise the debt ceiling maybe to another 12 or 15 trillion shillings. But the question that we need to ask ourselves, what do these absolute figures measure? What are they a measure of? And Honorable Speaker, they are just figures. I hear CPM buddy saying it's guesswork. I will avoid using the figure guesswork like John Buddy. But Honorable Speaker, those figures are basically meaningless. They signal nothing, they mean nothing. Today we could allow the National Treasury to raise the ceiling to 15 trillion shillings. But a country's public debt ought to be sustainable. And the sustainability of a country's public debt, Honorable Speaker, is only measured by a government's ability to be able to meet all its current and future financial obligations. And we can only be able to do that even for companies, Honorable Speaker, and accountants like Mbadi and good economists like the Vice Chair of this committee will tell you. Even for individuals and companies, when you walk into a bank, the bank will not measure your debt carrying capacity with absolute figures. They will use your cash ratios, your liquidity ratios, and that is all we are seeking to do at the macroeconomic level, to use ratios that can signal whether you have the debt carrying capacity that is sustainable for your country, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we would ask ourselves, what is the risk then of moving from a debt to a debt anchor away from an absolute figure? Honorable Speaker, one is that many people other than economists and finance literate people and very literate people will be able to tell you how you measure debt in present value terms. And that becomes a problem, and that's why you will find it was even easier then to convince Parliament and the House and the country that you are better off with an absolute figure. And I remember that is what we were told in 2014, that you are better off to move away from the debt anchor to an absolute figure where you know your debt ceiling is at 5 or 9 or 10 trillion shillings, and you will know when you are hitting there. But again, Honorable Speaker, we must ask ourselves, what are we measuring with that 10 trillion shillings? If someone was to ask us today, our debt ceiling today is at 10 trillion shillings, what is it a measure of? Is it a measure of our debt carrying capacity? Is it a measure of how sustainable our debt is? And the simple answer is that that absolute figure is meaningless in terms of being able to define whether our debt is sustainable and whether the country has the capacity to carry that amount of debt. Honorable Speaker, on the debt anchor, we also can't close our eyes, Honorable Speaker. And I'll ask the debt committee and the privatization committee, ably chaired by Shuri and vice chaired by economist Dr. Makali Mulu, that you have your work cut out for you. And this House will depend on the privatization and debt committee to be able to review our debt management strategies, not once a year, not biannual, but almost on a quarterly basis, be able to engage with Treasury and be able to know how are we doing in terms of our debt. The Budget and Appropriations Committee, and I don't know if the chair is here, and the Finance Committee also have a role to play. We just passed our finance bill yesterday, Honorable Speaker, that will finance the appropriation bill that we have just passed this morning, Honorable Speaker. And it is this House and the National Treasury that will determine whether this country continues to borrow in a sustainable manner or not. And Honorable Speaker, the deficits that we budget for informs how much more debt we are loading onto our national public debt. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, even as we debated the finance bill yesterday and the day before, even the second reading, I remember many members who said that we did commit to move away from sinking deeper into the pit or the hole of public debt. And the surest way of not sinking deeper, Honorable Speaker, is one, to have a very clear liability management system. And I am glad the National Treasury, in their engagement with the committee, have indicated that they are embarking on a robust liability management program, a liability management program that will ensure that, one, there is actual and actual, almost a fiscal consolidation that you can not only feel but touch. Because we talk about fiscal consolidation, but the fiscal consolidation is just spoken about. But we never actually get into actual fiscal consolidation to ensure, one, that we are cutting on unnecessary expenditure in government. And therefore, that's why I'm saying the Budget and Appropriations Committee has its work cut out. And so does the Debt Management Committee, or rather the Privatization and Public Debt Committee, have its work cut out to ensure that whatever deficits we have in our budget books are at a level that is manageable and sustainable. They have their work cut out, Honorable Speaker, to ensure that this liability management program that the National Treasury is talking about is actually actualized. Honorable Speaker, I'm happy when I perused through the report by the committee. You remember from way back in 2014, this country embarked on what were popularly known as the Eurobonds. And some of the problems that we are living under today are a result of those Eurobonds. Honorable Speaker, you will see in the committee's report, there is a Eurobond of 2014 of $2 billion that is maturing next year. And these are some of the short-term commercial debts that have gotten us into the problems we are. And part of the liability management strategy the National Treasury has, and as they spelled it out to the committee, if you go through the report, you will see, and those who are able to follow the public participation exercise, even from the experts who appeared before the Public Debt Committee, we will see that besides fiscal consolidation to ensure that we continue to narrow our fiscal deficit, there was a call on proper liability management. And I'm glad, Honorable Speaker, as I said, the National Treasury is already working on this liability management program, where, for instance, that $2 billion Euro bond of 2014 that matures in June of 2024, way before it matures, they're already working on a program to ensure that they retire this Euro bond, not by going back again to the commercial market and getting other commercial loans or another Euro bond to succeed this one. Because that is the easier route, Honorable Speaker. And the only reason why governments in Africa and elsewhere have opted for commercial borrowing in Eurobonds is because they usually come without any preconditions. Honorable Speaker, from the time I joined this House in 2013 to the time I was a chairman in the Budget and Appropriations Committee, every other report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee always speaks to the twin issues of fiscal consolidation. It also speaks to our debt management strategy. But as I said, those reports are just filed away. All our recommendations seem not to be followed. There are always recommendations of moving away from commercial debt to more concessional loans that are longer term. Honorable Speaker, I am happy that the National Treasury now is deliberate and intent on moving away from these expensive commercial and short-term loans to longer-term concessional loans, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, concessional loan, okay. Forgive me, Honorable Speaker, it's where I come from. I was about to say concessional loans. Concessional loans, Honorable Speaker, either bilateral or multilateral loans, are loans that we will enjoy cheaper interest rates. And I think the most expensive of these that we are getting today, I think, are about 2.5%. I think from the China Exim Bank, which go for a period of about 30 to 40 years. As opposed to these Eurobonds that are 10 years, the one that we are retiring today, Makali Mulu will tell you, we got it at 6.8% in 2014. But because of the risks, our risk profile, the spread of this Eurobond sometime last year, around elections time, I was seeing it was at it had a spread of about 14 to 18%. The highest at one point being at 21%. Meaning if that Eurobond was to be called up, would pay interest rates of up to 21%. But today, Honorable Speaker, because again, post-elections and with the stabilization of the economy, that spread has come down to a current rate of about 12%. But still 12% is too high for a country like Kenya, a middle-income country and a growing economy like ours. 6.8 is still high, and that is why the National Treasury is saying we look at more concessional loans, which would, the most expensive, be about 2.5%, but there are loans that you get even at 1%, 1.5%, 2%. And Honorable Speaker, I've heard the President speak also to that question of even those concessional, multilateral and bilateral loans, because African countries are also getting those loans very expensive. What African countries are getting at 2.5, 1.5%, you find other economies in the world, especially in the West, getting at 0.1%, like in the US. Others in Europe will get at 0.5 to 0.1, 0 point when we are getting at almost 2 and above 1%, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, let me not belabor the issue of liability management because I can see the committee has spoken into it in detail. I've also spoken about the fiscal consolidation, which, as I said, we have a duty and a responsibility as a House. And I'm happy that what the committee is recommending in part of the recommendations they have proposed to bring during our third reading will touch on some of the issues that a number of people, even during public participation, were not very happy about. I remember the Institute of Social Accountability did present on the particular clause that sought to take over the work of Parliament in our constitutional mandate to oversight the national government and the National Treasury, and that the committee has agreed with people who came through public participation and the concerns even of many of us who felt that we cannot relinquish our responsibility as Parliament to other people who are not elected by the people of Kenya to oversight. Honorable Speaker, let me end it there and request the Honorable Makali Mulu, who is the Vice Chair of this Public Debt Committee and who indeed put in a lot of work and long hours. I remember seeing them working even over our weekend to be able to put together this report for tabling and adoption by the House, and urge the House to support this bill. It will go a long way to helping our country to be able to measure our debt and our debt carrying capacity and be able to know how sustainable our debt is. Just like as individuals, as corporates, for those of us who have managed corporate companies, we are able to get signals of whether we are moving towards the red. And that is all that this bill seeks to do, to alert us and alert the country when we are moving towards the red in terms of our debt carrying capacity and how sustainable our debt is, Honorable Speaker. And with those very many remarks, allow me to ask, I beg to move and ask the Vice Chair, Dr. Makali Mulu, to second. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Makali Mulu, Honorable.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to start by thanking the Majority Leader for that good moving of the bill, Honorable Speaker. But it's important, Honorable Speaker, because I'm going to be discussing the committee report, that I make some introductory comments. Honorable Speaker, this bill was presented or was published on 4th May 2023, and it was read a first time in this House 6th June 2023. Thereafter, Honorable Speaker, you referred to the committee, Public Debt and Privatization Committee, for consideration. And in line with our standing orders, 2 advertisements were placed in Daily Nation and Standard newspaper calling for stakeholders and individuals to submit their comments on this bill. So, Honorable Speaker, in response to that advertisement, we got some comments from institutions and individuals. And it is important I mentioned them, Honorable Speaker, that we were able to get submissions from Institute of Social Accountability, TISA, International Budget Partnership, IBP Kenya, Institute of Economic Affairs, and Institute of Certified Public Accountants, Honorable Speaker. We also got submissions from University of Nairobi Women Economic Empowerment Hub, Civil Engineering Contractors Association, as well as individuals, namely Jimmy Wanjiki and Valadine Wangeshi Lukwaro. On the basis of that interaction, Honorable Speaker, the committee was able to prepare a report, and then that report we did table it yesterday, and that's the report, Honorable Speaker. I want just to bring highlights from that report, Honorable Speaker. But before I want to do that, Honorable Speaker, it is also important that I appreciate the support we got from your office, Office of the Clerk of the National Assembly, the support we got from all the stakeholders, Treasury, Honorable Speaker, our Parliamentary Budget Office, and our legal department. With this support, Honorable Speaker, we have managed to go through this bill, and the bill has about 7 clauses. So very quickly, I just want to run clause by clause so that I help honorable members appreciate the bill and be able to make their comments or debate the bill, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the first clause, which has been amended, is clause 2A, and the objective of this, or the import of this clause, Honorable Speaker, is in the bill we have what we call the county public debt. County public debt. So there is a proposal to delete the word public so that we remain with the county debt. After interacting with the stakeholders, Honorable Speaker, we all did agree that once you delete the word public from the county public debt, then there is a risk of, instead of focusing on public debt, which is guaranteed by the national government, that may also include debts which have been incurred at the county level. For example, most counties are going to the banks and getting bank overdrafts to pay salaries. So there was that strong feeling that if you remove the word public, then you are likely to be even including those lower levels of county debts. So on that basis, we are recommending as a committee, Honorable Speaker, that we retain that as it is. Honorable Speaker, the other proposal under clause 2, which is clause 2B, was to provide a divination for financial obligations. And I want Honorable Speaker to look at what the Constitution says about public debt. If you look at Article 214 of our Constitution, public debt is defined as follows. Public debt means all financial obligations attendant to loans raised or guaranteed and securities issued or guaranteed by the national government. So what this bill tries to do, Honorable Speaker, under clause 2B, is now to come up with a definition of financial obligations so that we have a clear definition and we don't entertain ambiguity in terms of what should be paid or not paid. On that basis, Honorable Speaker, as a committee, Treasury had crafted some definition, and as a committee, we thought it was not good enough to capture what is intended in the Constitution. So we will be, as we go to the third reading, we will be proofing what they have done, and we will be giving a new definition, just an improvement of what they have done. But in principle, Honorable Speaker, we are in agreement that there is need to come up with a definition of what financial obligation means, so that there is clarity. The other clause, Honorable Speaker, is clause 3A, where the proposal is to delete the word national, so that instead of having national debt, we replace national debt with public debt. And this is aligned with the Constitution. The Constitution talks about public debt, not national debt. So this is just like cleaning the act, Honorable Speaker. And as a committee, we really have no problem supporting that. So we are saying that as we move to the future, Honorable Speaker, then we will be agreeing with the Treasury so that we replace the word national debt with public debt. Clause 3B, Honorable Speaker, is intended to ensure that the Public Debt Management Office has more role in controlling what happens at the national level in terms of matters public debt and what happens at the county level matters county debt, public debt. What is happening, Honorable Speaker, currently is that the Public Debt Management Office can only now go and monitor or audit county public debts at the invitation of the counties. But the law says their work is actually to oversee in totality the public debt. So what this clause 3 is attempting to do, Honorable Speaker, is to make sure that then the Public Debt Management Office can audit both at the national level and at the county level matters related to public debt without the word invitation. And we think that's a good amendment, Honorable Speaker. So we are agreeing to that as a committee, and we will be supporting that. Now, clause 4, Honorable Speaker, is a clause which now, and I want members to listen, clause 4 is suggesting, currently, this office called the Public Debt Management Office, under clause 4, is being suggested that this office also takes the advisory role to advise Parliament. Currently, they only advise Treasury. Now, their advisory role is being extended. And if you look at the principle of separation of power, first of all, this office, honorable members, is a department or a directory under Treasury, which means they are answerable to the PS Treasury and CS Treasury. So from that analysis, you can see that it is like Parliament will be being advised by a department in the Treasury. And this, on the basis of principle of separation of powers, is not obtainable. So, honorable members, this clause 4, even though they are proposing that we do that, this is a clause the committee has taken a position, and we are saying there is no way Parliament can be advised by a department in Treasury. On the basis of that, this clause will be proposing for deletion, and it will not be part of the bill. Clause 4B, Honorable Speaker, talks about the other issue I was discussing is just a cleaning exercise, replacing national debt with the public debt, because public debt is divided in the Constitution. Now, clause 6A, Honorable Speaker, this is, to me, this was the main reason why this bill was crafted by Treasury. And it is what the majority leader was explaining. And I want to plead with honorable members that we take time to listen to what the committee observed. In this clause, it has two sections. Section 1 of the clause seeks, part 1 of the clause seeks to delete the words "a limit" and replace them with the words "set threshold." But in addition to that, there is an insertion of a proviso at the end of the sentence that reads, and I want our members to listen to this proviso, which reads, provided that if at any time the Cabinet Secretary is unable to maintain the public debt threshold as required under this subsection or the regulations thereunder, the Cabinet Secretary shall submit a written report to Parliament explaining the cause of the breach on the threshold and provide a time-bound remedial plan. Honorable Speaker, as the majority leader said, let me handle the second part because it's easier. What this second part is saying is, honorable members, as Parliament, we have been asked or been coerced to allow our power be exercised by Treasury. What they are saying is, we allow the CS Treasury to breach the law, and then it can come to explain to us. If you look at the Constitution, it is very clear that it is only Parliament that can set debt limit, or the threshold. So on the basis of that proviso or part 2 of that clause, Honorable Speaker, as a committee, we have said no to it, and we will not be allowing it. So we only set the threshold, but part 2 will be deleted as we move to the future, Honorable Speaker. Now, let me come to the threshold, Honorable Speaker. And this way I want to spend a bit of time, Honorable Speaker, because it's important. Now, honorable members, when I joined this House in 2013 together with the majority leader and other members like Honorable Boy, The first year we go to this house, that was March. Before the end of that year, the house was presented with a proposal to change the debt ceiling from 1.2 Kenya shillings trillion to 2.4 trillion. Personally, I did oppose that proposal, but at the end of the day, the majority carried their day, and we moved it up to 2.4. Over time, we hit that limit. And then Treasury came back to us again, and instead of now a limit, they proposed to go back to the threshold, the so-called debt anchor. So we went back to a percentage of the GDP. And Honorable Speaker, at that time, the percentage we approved was 50% of GDP. This is the net present value of the public debt to GDP was 50%, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we operated under that up to almost around 2017. And in 2017 again, Treasury came back, Honorable Speaker, and we went back now to our limit as a figure again. Where we set the figure, I think at that point, if I remember well, was about 8.4 trillion. Then over time, the House was requested we push it to 9 trillion, which we did after a serious discussion in this House. And just last year, as we were approaching the election, Honorable Speaker, as we were approving the last budget, the budget we are implementing now, Honorable Speaker, Treasury came back again and said we needed to raise the ceiling to 10 trillion, Honorable Speaker. So what am I saying? I'm saying as a country, we have been able to experience both sides of this threshold, a nominal figure and a percentage. And the truth of the matter is, despite of which one we are using, we always end up being requested to improve it. So what has happened currently, Treasury is now requesting this House to approve a net present value of the public debt to GDP of 55%. Why 55%, honorable members? Honorable members, the World Bank and the IMF, who are like the financial monitors in the world, would normally carry an assessment of the country capacity to get debt. We call them public debt carrying capacity of countries. So Kenya, from where we are, after looking at all the factors, we are assessed as our debt carrying capacity is 55% of the GDP, the net present. So, honorable members, what you have been requested is now, you move from a nominal figure of 10 trillion and place the country in 55% where it should be as assessed by the international bodies. So that is our debt carrying capacity. Now, the challenge we have, honorable members, by the time we are interacting with the Treasury, our net present value was 60%, which already means we have already breached. We are above the 55. As I'm talking to you now, and you had the chair budget explained, we are at 62.5%. So the question in the committee we have been asking ourselves is, Honorable Speaker, we are asking ourselves, and you are a renowned lawyer in this country, do we legislate? Well, we already know that we have breached this position. And that's why we see, Honorable Speaker, we had said we provide a threshold of 55% plus 5%, so that if it gets to 60%, then we will be saying, let's make the law without breaching the law from the word go. On the basis of that, then what it means is this. Through the fiscal consolidation path, Honorable Speaker, then Treasury will be working towards bringing the percentage to where it should be 55%. But now we have another dilemma now. The figure has moved beyond the 5%, Honorable Speaker, which you are proposing. So that means as we go to the third reading, honorable members, there will be need to look at that plus or minus 5% again and see how the drafting of the law can be done to allow Treasury to operate within the region of breaching, but force them to work towards achieving the 55%. That is the explanation, honorable members. So as we agree to this, honorable members, this is an area we will want to hear your input so that as you craft the final drafting of the law, then the drafting is correctly done. But Honorable Speaker, I just want to say this. As a committee, and Honorable Speaker, I must really thank you and the wisdom of the House through creating this Committee of Public Debt and Privatization. This committee up to now, we have tabled about 3 reports relating to public debt and CFS, Consolidated Fund Services. And honorable members, I really urge you to look at those reports. They are providing very important information. But just among the things you have proposed, honorable members, so that we are able to control public debt in this country, the first thing is annually, honorable members, you do discuss what we call the medium-term public debt strategy. You discuss it annually because it comes together with the budget policy statement. So when you discuss that document and you approve it, honorable members, it means on annual basis you have an opportunity to set the public debt ceiling. So immediately you set the budget deficit, you'll have set the public debt ceiling. So it means on annual basis, honorable members, our committee is proposing that we take this document seriously and make sure that whatever ceilings we agree on are adhered to by Treasury. The second point we have proposed, Honorable Speaker, when we look at the public debt portfolio in this country, what we call the stock, Honorable Speaker, and the payments we are making, Honorable Speaker, we have realized this country has uncommitted loans. Loans which we have already signed before, but because we are not drawing, Honorable Speaker, we are paying commissions. You'll be surprised, Honorable Speaker, to realize that by up to March this year, this country had paid about 580 million just for failure of not withdrawing the loan which has already been approved. The other thing, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of the foreign exchange. Because of the way our foreign exchange regime is not stable, Honorable Speaker, we end up spending a lot of money paying for the changes, what we call the volatility of the dollar and the other foreign currency. So this is another area, Honorable Speaker, we want the House to take seriously. Because I could hear the majority saying we need to come up with the strategies of how to monitor this. The other thing, Honorable members, is we have said it is time this country came up with a sinking fund for paying public debt. So that once you introduce that, we establish that sinking fund, Honorable Speaker, over time, like now we should not be discussing the issue of how do we pay the Euro bond, which we took 2014. If we had a sinking fund, we will be paying that amount on annual basis, and by now we'll just be awaiting to issue the final payment for that Euro bond, and will not be even straining Kenyans. The other thing, Honorable Speaker, we have said as a committee, and it's important, Honorable members, you note this. We have said the basic principle of borrowing is that the generation which is borrowing should not be in a position to overburden the future generation. We call it in a technical term intergenerational equity. So that when we are borrowing today, we must remember our future children and grandchildren will be expected to pay these loans because they are 30, 40 years loans. So there must be a procedure to ensure that we don't overburden our future generations. In that case, honorable members, as a House, as we discuss public debt, it's important we take note of some of these important things so that we will be able to help our future generations so that by the time we take the loans, by the time they mature, they will have generated enough income for the country to repay without overburdening the future generations. Last but not least, Honorable Speaker, on this issue of public debt, as a committee, we are saying that application of public debt, any money borrowed from outside Kenya and domestically, so long as it is a loan, it must be applied for intended purposes. Honorable Speaker, we have seen a situation where members are saying these loans are being applied to projects which are not feasible, projects which don't generate income for the country, which are not sending enough returns to the country. At the end of the day, we end up paying for debts using our exchequer, our consolidated fund services, and not with the resources which have been generated by investing in these loans. So, Honorable Speaker, with those many remarks, honorable members, those are some of the things you have done as a committee, and we'll be urging you when we come to the third reading, so that as we amend this bill, we amend the bill to an extent that we don't lose our independence in terms of determining public debt, and at the same time we don't allow a department in Treasury to start telling us how to relate with public debt, because we have our own Parliamentary Budget Office which has the capacity to do that with this House. So with those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I second, and I want to thank my members for the many days we sat together to discuss this bill. I want to thank everybody who was involved and our stakeholders. Once more, Honorable Speaker, thank you. I second.
Thank you, Honorable Makali Mulu, I'll now propose the question, which is that the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 16 of 2023, be now read the second time. Omboko Milemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this chance to make a few comments on this particular bill, which has many items which try to manage our public debt and how we can actually move forward. Honorable Speaker, as I support, I want to indicate that this is a country which is reeling in high borrowing, like it has been indicated, that currently we have an outstanding debt of over 9.63 trillion, and with a debt ceiling of 10 trillion. And of the 10 trillion, about 4.5 trillion is domestic, while 5.09 is foreign. And we already have a budget which has a deficit of 718 billion. And if you look at the fiscal space for borrowing, then it means we have only a fiscal space of about 400. So indeed, it will be very difficult to finance the current budget, 2023-2024, without doing something about our ceiling levels, because our fiscal space is so small. I would wish to indicate that indeed it's good practice as advised by the IMF, that every country must borrow as per its capacity to carry the debt. And therefore, that's why this bill proposes that we move from a figure of 10 trillion, or if we were to increase it to 11 or 12, given the history that this figure was increased beginning 2013 from 1-point-something trillion, and currently it is standing at 10 trillion. I remember for the longest time many Kenyans imagined that Kenya has a lot of money. And with the rampant corruption that was going on within the country, the members of the public would understand that there's too much money in this country that cannot get finished even if there's corruption. But the truth, Honorable Speaker, and to this House and Kenyans, is that we were depending on daily basis on borrowing. And each time we depleted our stocks, we went back to Parliament and still got more loan, and that's how we sustained ourselves all the years, especially, remarkably, if you look at the figures as they are, the time between 2013 and 2017 coming 2022, because within that time alone, we were able to more than triple the foreign debt from about 2 trillion to over 10 trillion as it stands today. And therefore, there's need to manage our debt depending on our carrying capacity. And given that we are going the IMF way and World Bank way, the so-called Bretton Woods institutions, then it is important that we regulate our borrowing depending on our carrying capacity, and that's why a threshold of 55% debt anchor is being proposed. And that will be able to make us, in reality, reduce on our borrowing. Currently, what is the percentage of our debt vis-a-vis the GDP? It is much higher, like it has been indicated by the mover and the seconder. We were very lucky to have very strong mover and very strong seconder, two strong economists moving this particular bill. So we are standing at over 60%. It's about 62.5%. But now we want to come down to 55%. So in all this, it's a good, because the holistic agenda of this bill, therefore, is to try and move down the debt and manage it so that we move from where we are to a downward figure. And therefore, I think it is good, but then we have to put several measures in place to make sure that we don't allow our powers to be ceded to the minister. I want to indicate, as proposed by both the mover and the seconder, that it should not be, and the Parliament should not allow its powers of controlling the foreign debt to go to the minister. And I think both the mover and the seconder did not indicate the fact that within this bill, there was an attempt to try and lower the threshold of who was to manage debt to a level of regulation and not act. And that would have been very, very dangerous. I want to believe that in the third reading, we should be able to correct that, both as a committee and the House, that matters relating to foreign debt and borrowing must be exclusively in the hands of the Parliament and not be downgraded to a regulation where the minister can do whatever he wants to do, borrow, get out of the threshold, and still only come to Parliament for borrowing. Because if we did that, then Parliament would have completely abdicated its duty of managing both debt and budget of this particular country. Honorable Speaker, I know of very few countries that have gone the debt anchor way, but as Kenya, we need to be brave enough to actually confront it in that manner, because it is going to make sure that we manage our debt. Finally, as I finish, Honorable Speaker, I want to indicate that the too much
for this bill to live to its objectives, it requires some finances. And therefore, through the finance bill, through the revenue-raising measures that have been captured in the finance bill, resources then will be made available for purposes of implementing and cushioning this bill financially. I think the Senator is quite in order to advance that kind of argument. Proceed, Senator Chirankeri.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for ruling out Senator Sifuna, which I dismissed those assertions with contempt it deserve, and I don't want to go there. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, what I was just explaining, and I'm willing to educate him under a cup of chai and mandazi in lunch, of course, courtesy of you, is that, Mr. Speaker, with this bill, Mr. Speaker, will need financing. We'll need a processing, we'll need a factory. Where will President raise money to allocate to development of Mung Beans factory, Mr. Speaker? And I can see your leader is nodding in agreement. Maybe you need to sit close so that he can be appraising you, Mr. Speaker. With those very, very remarks, I support this bill. I have read, and I think this is the best that will happen to every farmer, Mr. Speaker. I know, Mr. Speaker, Senator Sifuna does not appreciate the role of farmers because he lives in a city and he waits for us to bring food. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Senators. Before we proceed with debate on this bill, allow me to read two messages that have been received from the National Assembly. I wish to report to the Senate that pursuant to Standing Order 46.4 of the Senate, I have received the following message from the Speaker of the National Assembly regarding the passage of the County Allocation of Revenue Bill, Senate Bills number 16 of 2023. Pursuant to the said standing order, I now report the message. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 41.1 and 144 of the National Assembly, standing orders, I hereby convey the following message from the National Assembly. And whereas the County Allocation of Revenue Bill, Senate Bills number 16 of 2023, was published via Kenya Gazette Supplement number 52 of 27th April 2023, to provide for the equitable allocation of revenue raised nationally among the county governments for the year 2023-2024, as well as defining corresponding responsibilities of the national and county governments in connection to the said allocations, whereas the Senate passed the said bill on the 6th of June 2023 and referred it to the National Assembly for consideration, and whereas the National Assembly considered and passed the said bill on Thursday, 22nd June 2023 without amendment and in the form passed by the Senate, now therefore, in accordance with the provisions of Article 110 of the Constitution and Standing Orders 41.1 and 144 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the said decision of the National Assembly to the Senate. Now, Honourable Senators, I am consequently, therefore, in the process of transmitting the bill to His Excellency, the President, for assent. I thank you. Honorable Senators, I wish to report to the Senate that pursuant to Standing Order 46.4 of the Senate, I have received the following message from the Speaker of the National Assembly regarding the passage of the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill, Senate Bills number 3 of 2023. Pursuant to the said standing order, I now report the message. Pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 41.1 and 144 of the National Assembly, standing orders, I hereby convey the following message from the National Assembly. That whereas the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill, Senate Bills number 3 of 2023 was published via Kenya Gazette Supplement number 7 of 31st January 2023 to authorize the issue of a sum of money out of the Equalization Fund and its application towards the service of the year ending 30th June 2023 and to appropriate the said sums for certain public basic services in the marginalized regions. And whereas the Senate passed the said bill on the 6th of June 2023 and referred it to the National Assembly for consideration, and whereas the National Assembly considered and passed the said bill on Thursday, 22nd June 2023 without amendment, and in the form passed by the Senate, now therefore, in accordance with the provisions of Article 110 of the Constitution and Standing Orders 41.1 and 144 of the National Assembly, standing orders, I hereby convey the said decision of the National Assembly to the Senate. Now, Honorable Senators, I am consequently in the process of transmitting the bill to His Excellency, the President, for assent. I thank you. Senator Boni, you know you cannot rise on a point of order. Indeed, you can seek your clarification. I'll allow that understanding order number
Thank
1.
you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me to, through you, to laud the National Assembly for taking such a short time to pronounce itself on these two bills. Mr. Speaker, just two things. The first one is that as you take these bills for assent to the President, we would like to see the presence of the Senate when the signing is going on. It is going to be very bitter to see Attorney General Muturi and the other Speaker there when our bills are being assented to. The second one, Mr. Speaker, is a point of appeal to members of the minority. Concurrence of the two houses is not a weakness. You remember, you behaved badly during the bill on IEBC just because the House had agreed with the position of the National Assembly. You have seen now there is a reciprocity, and this should be encouraged. We were not elected to be disagreeing with the National Assembly. In fact, the Constitution contemplates a situation whereby the two houses always agree in a complementary manner on important business like this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to make that remark.
Senator Professor Kamar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to support this wonderful bill from my very own student, the Mung Bills, Bill 2022. Mr. Speaker, this bill came to us in the last Senate, and I'm very happy that we interrogated it at that time, looked at a number of issues which have been ably addressed by Senator Wambua. May I take this first opportunity to congratulate the Senator for such a well-worded bill. Mr. Speaker, this bill is going to make a very big difference in the agriculture sector in this country. Mr. Speaker, my first degree is in agriculture, and I I know that there are crops that have been identified by bills or acts of parliament. What this bill is going to do is that it's going to shift the mung bean to a level, to the same level as the coffee or the tea crops. Crops that require processing, crops that require clear identification out of the other crops. One thing Senator Wambua convinced me in the last Senate was to convince me that we can pick one bean and run with it. And I'm really truly convinced because, Mr. Speaker, it is very important for us as a country to ask ourselves, what exactly do we have as export crops, even in this region? And I like the fact that in part one, he has actually articulated that we want to provide a framework for the implementation of effective marketing strategies for the mung bean in Kenya and internationally. I say this, Mr. Speaker, because we have an open market with COMESA. We have an open market with the EAC. Now we have an open market with the EU, apart from the fact that we have markets also in the East, including China. And in most cases, Mr. Speaker, there is trade imbalance in this country. The trade imbalance is resulting because whatever we do with these countries, they export more to us than we export to them. So we really need to identify a few products that can be exported. And this is what this bill is going to do. It is going to move this one bean to the level where we can export it the way you export coffee. And I say congratulations, Senator Wambua. By providing a framework or facilitating a modern way of farming the mung bean and generating a modern way of processing it, we will upgrade it to the level that you can sell it in a supermarket in the US, you can sell it in a supermarket in China, and you can sell it in a supermarket in the UK. And just to help us close the gap of export importation, because what we receive from all these countries is more than what we send. And the question has always been, when we discuss imbalance, and we are discussing the same imbalance even when we're in the Pan-African Parliament, you find that when you discuss imbalance, they say, what do you have that you can sell? I was in the SCP EU for a very long time, for almost 7 years in Parliament, both in the National Assembly and in Senate, and you find that AirPass, which was signed the other day by the President with the European Union, the same questions are coming. What do you have to sell to us? Mr. Speaker, currently we are exporting French beans, which is a fresh produce. We are exporting avocados, which are fresh produce. We are exporting mangoes. However much we sell fresh produce, it is very difficult to process them. So the mung bean is going to be the gold in the bean sector once this bill has gone through. Because one, the research sector is going to research on the beans, the special beans that can even grow in all corners of the country. So that apart from the sector, the areas of Kitui that are doing very well in the bean, we will have enough. I know that we have, the bill has provided that we will use the same beans for our own school feeding programs. But the money maker is going to be the export of this bean. And this is going to be very important for us, because before anybody exports any crop to us, we will also be telling them that we have what to export. So this is going to be good. Seed breeding is going to be prime. Hybrids that grow all over will be on. And the standards of packaging are going to be very high so that we can sell them anywhere, as I had mentioned earlier. One other aspect of this bill that is very important, Mr. Speaker, is the registration, which we debated.
on possible interventions on how to tap the great potential in ASALs, you would have dignified me. Please, I beg you, don't let me beg again next year. Munitafutie heshima hata kama ni kidogo. Hata kama wengine wananidharau, nipate kaheshima tu kidogo. Hii kuomba chakula hapana mzuri. Because we have the potential. The lands are vast. The climate is right. The soils are good. All we need is water, roads, security, and the right interventions. And then we don't have to beg again. If you go to Israel, if you go to United Arab Emirates, the climate is the same as in Garissa, as in Mandera, as in Wajir. But go to Dubai and see the transformation. Go to Israel and see the transformation. They are food secure. They produce everything they want. And I think that is doable. So this conference is very, very, very important. And I really want to thank Kipra. I want to thank ASALS. I want to thank the State Department of Planning for putting these great minds here today. I'm sure at the end of the conference, you'll come up with clear and concrete proposals to engage us in government to see what we can do together to tap that great potential in ASALS areas. I want to take this opportunity to really thank our Cabinet Secretary for ASALS, Rebecca Meano, and the PS, Dakota. I think you guys taught him the right things in this campus. And the governors in the ASALS counties. Because working together with me, we made sure that despite the intensity of the drought that was the most harsh in 40 years, after 5 failed seasons, through prudent planning and hard work and commitment of our CS, the PS, and the governors, and our office, not a single Kenyan died from the drought. That should never be an achievement, that we are celebrating that nobody died from drought. No. We shouldn't be there. We should be saying that drought should never be part of our life, because we have invested heavily in ASAL areas, sunk boreholes, constructed water ponds, small dams, and mega dams, and move away from rain-fed agriculture to irrigation so that we get enough food supply. And I'm sure that with this kind of engagement that has happened today, that is doable. So finally, I want to say thank you, the Honorable Owen Baya, our Deputy Leader of Majority. You guys in Parliament has done us proud last night, and the other night you stayed up to late at night. Mkanyorosha hii watu ya Azimio, mkapitisha finance bill. Na tulikuwa tumewaambia hawa. We have told them. So nimeona hii watu wetu ya for the state wanasema at the root of voting machine. There is nothing like a root of voting machine. Nobody votes as a machine in Parliament. All the members of the National Assembly who voted for the finance bill are part and parcel of the Kenya Kwanza plan. They were not voting for what William Ruto wants. They were voting for what they believe in, because they are part and parcel of our manifesto. When we were campaigning with these members of Parliament, we promised to do certain things. So nyinyi watu ya media, pana sema hao ni voting machine. Those are voting for their own agenda, and they have a responsibility. And we have told these as your characters, you cannot beat us. How? Sisi tulishida nyinyi mkiwa na serikali na system na nini, sasa tukiwa kwa serikali mtatushida hapa bunge. How? We have the numbers, you don't have the numbers. We have the ideas, you have no ideas. We have a plan, you had no plan. Sasa watu iko na plan na watu ya kuweka sufuria kwa kichwa, is there any comparison? There isn't. So I really want to salute our members of the National Assembly. The President and I are very proud of you. And we want to assure you that those funds that you have recommended we collect from the people of Kenya, they will be used prudently for the benefit of the people of this great country. And I want to thank our governors here in the Coast region. Despite the fact that this region voted overwhelmingly for Azimio, they have dignified the people of the Coast region. I have never seen a single governor from this region going to maandamano and wearing a sufuria on his head. Sasa wewe ndugu yangu Mungaro, vile tumependana siku mingi, ningekuona na sufuria kwa kichwa sinitazirai. The people of Kilifi will be embarrassed because these governors know that they need money to develop their counties. This money will come from revenue collected from the people of Kenya. And these governors are realistic. They are real. They know they have a government to run. And that is why they have refused to listen to Mzee Azimio. You see, Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, Martha Karua have no government of their own. They don't need any money from anybody to run anything. So, where ukiwafuata blindly utazimika peke yako. Because they have no obligation to anybody in this country. They are not accountable to anybody in this country. Nobody is asking them for salaries. Nobody is asking them to build roads. Nobody is asking them to build water plants. Then they tell you, twende maandamano tusimamishe pesa kukuja. Wewe ni governor. You have a budget. You need to pay people. You need to build roads. So utakuwa mjinga kufuata hiyo watu. You know, there was a story in my community. I don't know whether it is here among the Griamas and the other people from here. The hare is a very cunning small animal. Very cunning. Mjanja sana. Akadanganya fisi. Amwambia fisi, sasa wewe, hii mabibi zetu wameleta kichwa. Na sasa ndio tuwalainishe leo. Tuende tuwanyoroshe kabisa ndio waingie laini waache ujeuri. Sasa fisi unajua ni mjinga, akafikiria ile maneno ni ya ukweli. Yeye akaenda akatafuta kiboko ile kali. Sasa yule sungura akiwa pande ile akatafuta ile drama. Yeye anapiga pap. Alafu mwenyewe analia ngwe. Na ni yeye. Sasa fisi akiwa pande ile anafikiria sungura anapiga nani? Bibi. Na yeye akaanza kupiga bibi yake akamuua. Sasa nyinyi magavana mkiambiwa mpinge finance bill na ile mtu na hana kazi ya kufanya, kazi yake ni kupiga kelele, na wewe uko na wafanyikazi wanakungojea, uko na barabara zinataka zijengwe, mahospitali inataka dawa, wewe utakuwa ni mjinga kufuata mtu ambaye he has no responsibility? Utakuwa wewe ni kama ile fisi umendanganywa na sungura. Kwa hivyo I really want to in a very special way appreciate our governors, our 6 governors in this region for their leadership and for being realistic and knowing that elections are over. They have county governments to run. They work with the national government because we serve the same people for the benefit of the people, not just of this region, but the people of Kenya. So sisi tumeshukuru watu ya Pwani. I was here earlier this week. Tarudi tena na tena na tena. Pia tukifanya kazi tunaendelea kutafuta urafiki. So hii maneno ya urafiki ni mambo ya maana. Tunakaa na nyinyi tu namna hii. Sababu hapo mbeleni mlikuwa saa nyingine mnapotea mnafuata ile mzee, lakini amekwama. Amejaribu mara 5. Miaka ndio hiyo imesonga. Sasa nyinyi pia muangalie vile Kenya naenda, muone vile mtajipanga. Sisi tuko tayari kujipanga na nyinyi mkitukubali. Hata msitokubali hakuna shida, tutajipanga na wengine na tutafaulu. There's no problem. So, but it is our wish that we work together because it's the right thing to do and you are good people. So, and by we'll be here again and again. Tukitafuta urafiki wa watu ya Kilifi, tukitafuta urafiki wa watu ya Pwani. Mimi na rais tunawapenda na tunataka tufanye kazi na nyinyi na tutaendelea kuja hapa. Mambo ya bandari tumesuluhisha, inaendelea mzuri. Mambo ya bahari tumepanga mzuri. Waziri Mvuri anafanya kazi. There is a lot of interventions in the blue economy, and the economy of this region is moving well under President William Ruto and our government. We want nyinyi pia mrudishe mkono hapo mbeleni, tutembee pamoja so that we can develop this area, we can develop this region as we develop the whole country. So mimi nimeshukuru sana, sitaki kusidisha kupita hapo. Natakia nyinyi mema And may this conference be the start of the real transformation of the ASAL areas and the transformation of the Republic of Kenya. May God bless you and bless you abundantly. Asanteni sana.
Mheshimiwa Naibu wa Rais, ningependa kwa ruhusa yako kukusihi kubakia hapo tuchezewe wimbo wa taifa. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Naibu wa Rais. Tuweze kutulia wakati Mheshimiwa Naibu wa Rais anaondoka, na tumpigie makofi maana ametutunuku sana kuja Pwani.
Senator Sifuna Edwin. Senator Sifuna, just take your seat, resume your seat. I have this communication to make, then you can contribute. Honorable members, honorable senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon of visiting teachers and students from Kariobangi North Girls High School in Embakasi constituency. The group comprises 3 teachers and 95 students who are in the Senate for a one-day academic exposition. Honorable senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Honorable Senator Sifuna, as you take the stage to contribute to this bill, I would also ask you to take a minute to welcome the students and teachers from Embakasi Kariobangi Secondary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me join you and the Senate in welcoming the students from Kariobangi to our Senate this afternoon. I'm hoping that you have had opportunity to see around Parliament, to see the National Assembly as well, and that you will continue to work hard in school because these seats here, you notice they don't have anybody's name on them, meaning that any one of you working hard and finishing school, you can come back here in the future as senators of Nairobi. I just want to say I'm very proud of you. I'm very proud of your teachers and the work that they're doing, and continue supporting us. We hope that on the many issues that are facing our country, you are proud of the people that you elected, that we continue to speak for you. So enjoy your visit. Maybe you can spend the next 10 minutes listening to my very brief submissions. Then we come and have a chat outside the chamber after that. Mr. Speaker, allow me to begin. These students must know that once upon a time their senator was free labor for my father on his farm after I finished my Form 4. And I got opportunity. It might not look like it right now, but I grew many of these products, these crops that people are talking about. Sometimes when my colleague senators talk to me here, because I'm the senator of a city, they imagine I don't know what ndengu is. Mr. Speaker, when I finished Form 4, I was free labor for Mr. Watenya, my father. I grew maize, I have grown sugarcane, I have grown cassava, I have grown groundnuts, and I have grown this ndengu. And I want to confess here that before this motion or this bill came to the floor of the House, I didn't know that ndengu is called Mung bean, Mr. Speaker. So I want to thank Senator for Kitui for enlightening me that this is what we were talking about. I was expecting some very fancy crop, only to be told that it is ndengu. Mr. Speaker, allow me to also correct something that was said here by my colleague Senator Cherargei, Mr. Speaker, there is no...
What is your point of order, Senator Mandago?
Honorable Speaker, is the Senator for Nairobi in order to cast aspersion on his father that he was employing child labor, while indeed he was being mentored to become a serious, responsible citizen and a future senator, Mr. Speaker?
Senator Mandago, I do believe that the Honorable Senator for Nairobi was just using, analogies and semantics. Otherwise, free labor is free labor as it's described.
Mr. Speaker, I hope
but
Senator...
you're entitled to also make a correction.
Yes.
And amends on it.
Mr. Speaker, I hope Senator Mandago heard me when I said I had finished high school. I was an adult then. I was 18 years old, and my father made very good use of me during that gap year between Form 4 and when you joined the university. Mr. Speaker, I was saying that I wanted to correct a notion that had been presented by Senator Cherargei, that in fact, when we talk about food security, there is a component of food security that many of us miss. Food security does not mean that if there is no maize flour, you substitute with mung beans. No. Food security is met when the food that is available for the people also meets their food preferences. I have said on the floor of this house that as Luyas, as a Luya man, I consider ugali the only square meal that I can have, and that it is possible for me to starve even if you are feeding me with ndengu. I can die of starvation if you feed me only with rice. That's what I'm saying. It does not meet my food preference. Mr. Speaker, I want to also say that we have had a very difficult experience as farmers in other crops like maize, like sugarcane and the rest. And every effort that is there to protect farmers in other fields. Because, Mr. Speaker, it is very possible that the same reasons why maize farmers are crying at some point.
Senator Kinyua, what is your intervention?
Mr. Speaker, can I be allowed to make my submissions without this incessant intervention?
Take your seat, Senator Sifuna. Let me listen to what Senator Kinyua seeks to intervene on.
Mr. Speaker, the people of Kitui are listening, keenly listening. And when the Senator of Nairobi said he thought mung beans is a fancy crop, so does he insinuate, Mr. Speaker, that dengu is just another crop and people of Kitui are listening, Mr. Speaker? What did he mean by fancy, Mr. Speaker?
Senator Sifuna.
Mr. Speaker, you must rule my colleagues out of order. This is what we call frivolous points of order. Because I think it is a problem with language.
Proceed
yes,
to
allow me, please. Mr. Speaker, don't allow any further interventions. Mr. Speaker, I have even forgotten where I was because of all this. And this is the intention of these people. This is why they do it. Mr. Speaker, I was saying that because of the problems other farmers have experienced, we should not assume that the problems that bedeviled maize farmers, for instance, cannot bedevil the ones growing mung beans. Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy that in this particular bill, the Senator has made it clear that the intention of the bill is actually to protect these farmers. Mr. Speaker, I had a conversation with him regarding some of the provisions, and I wanted to speak to only 3 provisions of this bill. Mr. Speaker, the first one is Section 6, which provides that the national and county governments shall, where they implement feeding programs within schools or other institutions or areas falling within respective mandate, implement a homegrown feeding program aimed at maximizing the benefits for growers by linking schools and other relevant institutions to local production. Mr. Speaker, here in Nairobi, I saw my governor the other day launching what is perhaps the largest school feeding program in the country. He estimates to spend about 800 million shillings per year just to feed the students in the public schools in Nairobi. And because we do not have those farms here to grow some of these crops, I am happy that this bill is providing a mechanism where we can link that program of the county government of Nairobi with the growers in Kitui. So, Mr. Speaker, what we need to do is to make sure that even in these school feeding programs, we see that linkage between the county governments or national governments implementing similar programs and the farmers themselves so that we can maximize on value. Of course, there are criticisms for our school feeding program here because, Mr. Speaker, as you know, In Nairobi, we have about 205 public schools across the 85 wards. But Mr. Speaker, a majority of the students, many of the students, are in what we call non-formal schools, and that they are the bulk of the students here, so that implementing that school feeding program in public schools alone is not auguring well for many of the parents in Nairobi. And we have had this conversation with my governor. Because, Mr. Speaker, you will know that out of the 85 wards in Nairobi, there are 10 wards where there are no public schools. 10 whole wards, you go to places like Pipeline, with that high density, places like Kware, there are no public schools. So we have asked him that he must extend this school feeding program to even the non-formal schools. And I'm sure he will listen, because most of the times he does. Mr. Speaker, what we want people to know about this particular bill as well is that under clause I think it is clause 8(2), I did not understand why Senator Wambua wanted that all the growers of Ndengu be registered with the county governments. But he explained to me that if you are going to offer extension services to these farmers, the county government needs to know where these people are and what variety of the bean they are growing. Because, Mr. Speaker, one of the arguments that has been made in this country is that we are overregulated. There are too many regulations, there are too many licenses, there are too many registrations. And for me, when I was growing these crops back at home, I wouldn't imagine that I needed registration. I thought initially that it was going to add another layer of bureaucracy for these farmers. But Senator Enoch Wambua has very ably explained that if, in fact, we're going to have those farmers benefiting from the agricultural extension services that are mandated under this bill, you need to know who these people are and where they are and what they are growing. Also, Mr. Speaker, let me speak to clause number 9, where it requires that any person who markets, processes, or carries out large-scale trading in the Mung bean or its products must obtain a license from the relevant county government. I think this is the crux of this bill. Because, Mr. Speaker, the problem has always been, in any cash crop in this country, the exploitation by middlemen. The exploitation by middlemen that ensure that the farmers do not reap from what they have sown. Mr. Speaker, I only advised my senior that he may need, under the definition sections of the Act, to define what large-scale trading is, so that we don't victimize people who might not necessarily be large-scale traders. Mr. Speaker, a lot was made here about the impact of the just passed finance bill. And I was very happy when the Speaker made that ruling that, in fact, we can discuss that matter even in this particular discussion, because that has opened an avenue for me to also say a few things. I honestly believe that an increase in VAT, Mr. Speaker, because the argument was made here by Senator Cherargei that we are going to have more money for us to be able to give the county governments. We in the Azimio coalition, the minority party, argue that, in fact, the economic impact of the passage of the finance bill is going to be counterproductive, because many of these farmers rely on this same agricultural equipment that uses diesel. You are aware of the level of mechanization, or the level of fuel needs, especially in mechanized agriculture. And, Mr. Speaker, if you levy further taxes on fuel, we are going to see a lot of problems facing our farmers. He also made the argument that somehow those increased taxes are going to be able to support this particular program. Mr. Speaker, the way county governments receive resources is through that Division of Revenue Act that we deal with here in the Senate. And it is unfortunate that this was coming from Senator Cherargei, because I know his position on the Division of Revenue. If he can guarantee us that now that the taxes have been increased on just about everything, that next year when we come here to discuss the Division of Revenue, he will increase resources to the counties, I will be more than happy. Mr. Speaker, I told you, Nairobi is going to spend 800 million shillings, 800 million shillings per year to feed the children in public schools. Do you know, Mr. Speaker, that 800 million shillings is the entire extra allocation that Nairobi received under the Division of Revenue this year? So you can imagine, a single project like that in the county of Nairobi gobbles up every single penny that we added to the equitable share of the county of Nairobi. The county governor told us on Madaraka Day that he's going to put 500 million shillings in renovating City Stadium. Mr. Speaker, this is why we argue here every day with my colleagues, that counties need resources, counties need money. So if indeed the national government is receiving an additional 300 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker, why is it not possible for us to make sure that also the county governments receive money, additional resources commensurate to the responsibilities that we are adding upon them? I have stood here to debate bills upon bills that are adding layer upon layer of extra responsibility on the county governments. But there is never a commensurate measure to ensure that the counties actually have those resources to undertake the programs that we are asking them to undertake. So, Mr. Speaker, Senator Cherargei, I believe, was misleading the House, misleading the nation, by coming here to pontificate about how county governments are going to get extra allocation. Yet when the vote was here on this particular floor, he rejected those extra resources to go to county governments, including his own county government of Nandi. Maybe the people of Nandi don't need these extra resources. I think, Mr. Speaker, you had agreed to protect me from these incessant points of order. And you must rule him out of order and throw him out. Mr. Speaker, when he was speaking, I was very quiet. So let me conclude. I want to conclude by saying that I support fully this particular bill, and I want to congratulate my brother, Senator Kitui, for bringing this bill. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Cherargei. Senator Sifuna, sorry, Majority Leader.
That's very simple work you're giving me. Let me deal with the Mung bills first. Mr. Speaker, you know, I will respond later to the misleading information by my good friend Senator Sifuna. But first things first, let us deal with Mung bills. The only thing that I agree with Senator Sifuna, or I share in common with him, is that like him too, I came to learn in the Senate that dengue is called Mung. At least that much, Mr. Speaker, we agree. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, is that this is very personal to me. You know, Mr. Speaker, and perhaps that's also closer to what he said, my mother would have been very proud of you, Senator Wambua, because of what you're doing to this very important crop. As a young boy after high school, Mr. Speaker, the duty of preparing lunch for my younger siblings used to fall upon me. You remember back in the day, Mr. Speaker, we would wait for 2 years before joining universities. And that's a time that many of us will find many things to do. Senator Sifuna said he used to cultivate crops in his father's farm. One of the things I used to do, Mr. Speaker, is to prepare lunch for my younger siblings. And my favorite lunch preparation, Mr. Speaker, was Mung. For the simple reason that I'd play football up to 12:15, then quickly remember that, oh my goodness, they'll go for lunch break at 12:45, and I'll rush to the kiosk next by. As I rush to the kiosk, I'll quickly put water to boil. And the beauty with Mung, Mr. Speaker, is that in 15 to 20 minutes, this crop is ready. And you just need to add some onions and tomatoes, and you have lunch ready alongside rice. And I did it so many times until they started referring to me as, my mother used to say, you'll make Mung grow in our stomachs. Because that's the only meal I'd prepare because of not having sufficient time. And therefore, it's a good recollection to see Senator Wambua try and get a good coordinated effort to the farmers that give us this very nutritious crop and one of our favorite meals up to date, Mr. Speaker. Not only here in Kenya, but even when you travel across the globe, Mr. Speaker, especially in the southeast of Asia, this is a very popular dish, Mr. Speaker. And the fact that we have farmers in Kenya who for all those years, we have left them to the vagaries of the market to determine for themselves what value to be added, how to sell it, how to regulate its sale, how to organize and aggregate as farmers, Mr. Speaker, is quite unfortunate. And therefore, the effort by Senator Wambua is quite commendable, Mr. Speaker, because we need many of such regulations, Mr. Speaker, and legislations that will help our county governments realize that this is primarily the very reason why Kenyans accepted this thing called devolution. It was with the understanding that you are bringing services closer to the people. Part of the service, Mr. Speaker, that we speak about includes part of the responsibilities that I have seen Senator Wambua in the preliminary and even the first part of the bill on the responsibilities of the national and county governments, Mr. Speaker, on what measures they need to put in place, both policy and organizing our agriculture, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that our farmers are properly organized, guided, get the necessary support from our
agriculture departments. I have seen that the bill, Mr. Speaker, gives duties actually specifically, apart from the specific county governor. Later, further in the bill, there's actually specific reference to the CEC member in charge of agriculture and the responsibilities that they're supposed to carry out, Mr. Speaker. This is quite commendable because, you know, Mr. Speaker, many people don't realize, and I have seen even part of the bill as well to a large extent seem to not lay specific emphasis on what I want to speak about. Mr. Speaker, most, I'll take that again, Mr. Speaker, most of our agricultural practices in all over the country is subsistence farming, which slowly by slowly evolves into a way of living. You'd find that people plant either maize, beans, rice, just to feed themselves. But soon and very soon as they get better at cultivating that particular crop, they enlarge and they increase on the crop, having learned how to ply the trade better. They increase on the crop, and perhaps what they have as a surplus away from what their families can consume, they sell it off, Mr. Speaker. And that is how many Kenyans live their life in the rural settings, the people that we represent in this house. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, if as a country we look forward to a time where we shall be food secure, where we shall be able to lift millions of Kenyans out of poverty by encouraging practices that assure and guarantee even the smallest of farmers in the smallest of scale that they can make a living out of agriculture, then it is by coming up with policies, Mr. Speaker, that will ensure that these small-scale farmers are guided, protected, receive the kind of services that they need from either the county governments or the national government, Mr. Speaker, to be able to nurture this crop to its full fruition, Mr. Speaker, and gain a lot from it. I say that because, for example, tea, with all the challenges that we have in tea, part of the genius that has made tea to be the leading foreign income earner to the country for all those years is the fact that through KTDA, small-scale farmers, people who own a point of an acre, a quarter of a point, 2 acres, many of our farmers, in fact 60 to 70% of tea farmers in this country don't own more than an acre or 2. It's in small percentage, and even in families that as a father used to have 4 or 5 acres, over the years it has been passed down and shared equally amongst the 2 or 3 sons that you have. Therefore, everybody has an acre or less. But the fact that it doesn't matter how small your farm is, there's an aggregation process that brings together. You take your tea to the buying center, somebody does the job of processing it, another person transports it, and eventually it's sold, and that money finds its way back to the farmer. The unfortunate thing is that in many of these other crops, you can talk about maize, you can talk about wheat, you can talk about sorghum, you can talk about rice, is that there isn't that level of organization. Everybody is left to fend for themselves. And on many occasions, you'll find even, you won't find it strange, just like I see in my county, people drive in big lorries and knock on farm after the other. You find that on this farm, if they get somebody who is desperate and in a difficult situation, they negotiate to buy a bag of maize at 5,000 shillings. When they go to the next one and they find that for one reason or the other, he's not willing to sell, you find that they sell even for a higher price. So they're able to take advantage of our small-scale farmers because of lack of proper aggregation policies, Mr. Speaker. Part of the promise that we made as an administration, if you read Kenya Kwanza's The Plan, Mr. Speaker, our document that guides the implementation of the priorities that we gave as an administration, Mr. Speaker, small-scale agriculture and the aggregation of their products, ensuring that you're able to gather and collect crop from the smallest of farmers to the largest and have them enjoy almost shared benefits, despite the fact that they don't produce equally. The small-scale farmers don't enjoy the large economies of scale in things like pesticides and fertilizer, but you still try and bridge the gap, is a promise that we made, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it's very encouraging to see such bills come to the House, Mr. Speaker, and we must support such efforts so that the people of Kenya know that indeed, as the Senate, we prioritize every need, every crop. Every senator needs to come to the House and give us a proposal of ways in which they can make their counties economically viable. Mr. Speaker, we must begin to change our thinking. And that is a problem that I have. And I wish Senator Sifuna was here as I make my presentation, because he comes from the school of thought that forever, that it is possible, Mr. Speaker, to fund counties to trillions of shillings and ensure that for every need that farmers have, we shall always send money to them, Mr. Speaker. Part of the organization that I see being brought, Mr. Speaker, is that you know that it is a universal principle that for every service that you enjoy from a government, there must be pay for it, Mr. Speaker. The good organization, the licensing that Senator Wambua is talking about, is not money that shall be reverted back to the national government. That's a form of taxation to the people. But the beauty about it, and the beauty of what is in this bill, Mr. Speaker, is that I want to propose, and the unfortunate thing is that perhaps Senator Wambua, during a committee of the whole, this is something that you may want to propose, though we can have actually an overarching principle for all crops about this, Mr. Speaker, is that when counties collect levies, then we must ring fence that levy, even the license fee, to go back to the development of the particular crop. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, it will happen like happened to us in tea. Why did we abolish cess and levies from the tea crop, Mr. Speaker? It's because counties were collecting cess from tea factories and the farmers that were doing this crop, but not making the roads that was meant to do. Yet previously, before we had county governments, Mr. Speaker, that is what used to happen. Therefore, we must find a way of ring fencing these levies that are collected from these farmers, so that we see this is the way that you shall develop and ensure, Senator Wambua, that your farmers in Kitui and all the farmers in Kenya who shall be participating in the development of this crop have good extension services, have got better pest control, because the county government will be able to use that levy to send 1 or 2 officers here to Kaldro to receive training and be guided properly, go back to Kitui, impart the farmers with knowledge, ensure that if this year you're producing 10 kgs per acre, that there are practices that can be used even to make you produce 15 or 20. That is the beauty of government. That's how county governments need to operate. We must stop this obsession, Mr. Speaker, of imagining that we shall just always send monies to counties and that it is possible to find at some point where we'll have said, oh, finally we have sent resources enough with the services. We must be creative in our thinking and challenge our counties to know. I believe you, Mr. Speaker. I persuade my colleague senators to believe and understand that it is possible. And farmers, I have seen this with my tea farmers. I see this even with sugarcane farmers in my county who are now pleading and saying, please pass the sugar bill that is before the Senate and the National Assembly. We don't mind paying the sugar levy, that sugar development levy, so long as it's ring-fenced and we know that it shall come to develop for us roads that shall take the cane back to the factories and develop even seed cane for us. So people don't have a problem paying taxes, Mr. Speaker. They just have a problem with how that tax is spent, Mr. Speaker. And even this conversation about the finance bill, Mr. Speaker, it's all about people asking themselves that once we give this money to the government, what is our assurance? I want to give an assurance, Mr. Speaker, that as a leader in this House, as a leader in one of the 3 arms of government in charge of the legislature, now that the finance bill has been passed, the duty is upon us to ensure that for every tax that Kenyans are paid to this administration, that it is put to prudent use, Mr. Speaker, so that eventually we shall be able to, at least to a good extent, win over those Kenyans who have a problem paying taxes simply on account that they do not see it going to do that which it was meant for, Mr. Speaker. This is a proposal that we find itself in this particular bill, and for which I agree with Senator Wambua. If you read the Intergovernmental Relations Act, Senator Wambua, many times, and we have seen this proposal, our counties rely on the national government, either to in transfer of functions, Mr. Speaker, that when a county, for example, is not able to collect levies, or one reason or the other particular service they are not able to provide, they surrender it to the national government. Senator Wambua, if and when this bill is eventually passed and enacted into law, it is possible to strictly follow every letter and spirit of this document and have your own county of Kitui develop and build this practice of Mung cultivation to such excellent levels that other counties, including the national government, can actually transfer the function of developing policy and the practices of Mung farming to Kitui government, so that whatever they use, whatever practices they have learned, applies across the country. That is what devolution is about. It should not only be imagined that it is always the counties that surrender to the national government functions. It is possible for a county government to excel in a particular practice and trade to a point that the national government actually selects and says, County Wajir or County Marsabit have excelled so much in the development of livestock and, building the paddocks and developing the framework in that trade to a point that we want to cede even policy development to them. And whatever they do there in Wajir, in Marsabit, in Kitui, applies across the county. That is what we need to be aspiring to as representatives of county in this house. That is the spirit of devolution, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, let us not reduce this conversation about counties. I hear my friends from the minority side each and every time want to remind us, oh, we wanted 417. It's not just about money. It's more than money, Mr. Speaker. You can send billions. And we know that we have done this. We have capacity, Mr. Speaker, to stand up for higher than even what they are talking about. But, Mr. Speaker, we are alive to the challenges and the situation that we find ourselves in as a country. The thing that I want to challenge my colleagues, all of us in the Senate, is think of ways in which we can spur economic activity in our counties over and above that the funds that we devolve to our county. It's not just about sending resources. Resources are important, Mr. Speaker, but more important are ideas and policies that will make counties sustainable, Mr. Speaker, over and above, beyond even that which is devolved as a fund, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I congratulate Senator Wambua for this immense and important proposal that he has sent to us. Of course, I have seen the fines that is being proposed on large-scale farmers, especially those that fail to register and all those challenges that may arise out of it. I hope, Mr. Speaker, that counties will understand and appreciate, Mr. Speaker, that any levy that has been developed or gained to the county from the practice of this particular crop, Mr. Speaker, should be cultivated back to it, Mr. Speaker, at least to a greater extent. It's not possible maybe to do it 100% because there are other services, but at least to a greater extent, Mr. Speaker, see ways in which, as a county, you can develop, train other farmers, develop a subsidy program like the national government is doing, Mr. Speaker, with the fertilizer subsidy. Of course, I know people are talking about the cost of food, but you have to appreciate, Mr. Speaker, and one of the things I'm happy about is our fertilizer subsidy program, Mr. Speaker. Those of us that come from the food growing regions, Mr. Speaker, appreciate, at least know that despite the fact that there is a high cost of food right now, in the next 2 or 3 months, we shall have a bumper harvest, Mr. Speaker. I work in many farms over weekends, Mr. Speaker, and I see the kind of crop that you're expecting this time, and I appreciate that this first policy that this administration took of running through a subsidy program to our farmers, Mr. Speaker, is beginning to yield fruits. Second thing, which I have seen Senator Wambua propose, is the fact that it is important to register farmers. The new gold, Mr. Speaker, they say, the new oil, Mr. Speaker, they say, is data. Data is king. Whoever is making decisions, Mr. Speaker, that is well informed by modern and well-kept and updated data, Mr. Speaker, makes the most accurate decision. That's why I appreciate the proposal to register these farmers, Mr. Speaker. You know for a fact, Mr. Speaker, then many times, Mr. Speaker, and we've had this conversation about the media and this obsession that they have about negative news in our country. A genius thing happened, Mr. Speaker. I don't know if you're aware, Mr. Speaker, that upon the coming into office of this administration, within 2 months, and with the least of budget possible, we were able to register farmers across the country, millions of them who are now benefiting out of the fertilizer subsidy program. In fact, previous reports that were found at the Ministry of Agriculture were quoting 5 to 10 billion shillings as what it will cost to register farmers in the country. But out of a meeting chaired by the President and his deputy, Mr. Speaker, chiefs, and using the provincial administration structure, were able to go to each village and register people village by village because they know your land size. You cannot go to your village, Mr. Speaker, and claim to have 10 acres while your chief knows very well that you live on 5 points. That was the quickest way to get the proper and most accurate data today, and it is based on that information that you book your location. Those with 2 acres, because the science is there, Mr. Speaker, you need X number of bags per acre. So depending on your, on your size, Mr. Speaker, that's the amount of fertilizer that you apply for. This is the kind of modern agriculture practice that is being advocated for in this bill, and I support the fact that there will be need for registration of farmers, Mr. Speaker. This is the kind of legislation that you are looking for as a House, Mr. Speaker, and I hope we can have many such legislations, Mr. Speaker, so that we help our counties to appreciate the important role that they play. The fact that agriculture is devolved and they know that there is need to manage our agriculture better, Mr. Speaker, so that there is better productivity. Because the more you produce as a county, Mr. Speaker, the more you are able to earn, the more levies you are able to collect, the more services you are able to provide. You improve on your gross domestic product as a county, Mr. Speaker, as we have seen in the last few days. And I hope this can be the same. I challenge colleague senators. There's something that can be done. Even those that come from the most arid of areas, Mr. Speaker, up north, and in very difficult parts of the county, there is at least something that you can do and excel it to greater levels, Mr. Speaker, and earn a living for your people. And this is what the Senate is about. This is what devolution is about. And I hope that we can have as many legislation such as this, Mr. Speaker. With those many remarks, I beg to support and congratulate my colleague, leader, Senator Wambua, for a brilliant and well thought out bill. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Majority Leader. Senator Wamatinga Wahome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I also like to support this wonderful bill from the Senator for Kitui. Mr. Speaker, sir, I do pride to be sitting in the Committee of Agriculture, and I've seen the vigor and the passion that the Senator for Kitui has been pushing this bill, among other bills that will bring changes in the agricultural sector. As has been said by many, Mr. Speaker, sir, MAGBIN can be one of the products that can ensure that Kenya moves closer towards attainment of food security. We are all aware that it's not a highly perishable product, and that being the case, Mr. Speaker, sir, putting legal frameworks in place, enhancing and encouraging farmers and protecting them so that they are not exploited, can be a move that can ensure that Kenya will never again rely on relief food. Mr. Speaker, sir, we know that MAGBIN is also very rich in nutrition value, and we know that with discussion of starting school feeding programs, like has been done by the County of Nairobi, and which is a very fast picking momentum in other counties, MAGBIN is one of the things that we can resort to instead of relying on the traditional beans that have been up to now a challenge even to get. In terms of farming, we know that this is a crop that does well in areas that do not have a lot of rainfall. What we need to do, and as I thank Senator Wambua for this, is to manage it so that we have post-harvest wastages will be managed, and at the same time, we'll encourage the county governments to ensure, as they are arranging to start school feeding programs, one of the main components, other than ugari and maize, should be the MAGBINs. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to thank the Senator for the passion that he's expressed so far, and indeed for coming up with this wonderful bill, and for his very, very supportive role even when we are embarking on the coffee and tea bill. And now, after we are done with the MAGBIN, I know that we are going to start on macadamia and nuts bill. And Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to say the commitment of the Agricultural Committee, where I and Senator Wafula here sits, and Senator Wambua, under the able leadership of our chair, Senator Murango from Kirinyaga, we want to be written in the books of history at that committee that sat down regardless of the party lines and decided we must make a difference in this country. We must end the overexploitation of our farmers by cartels, by laws that only favors a few people. We have, Mr. Speaker, sir, decided we are going to take this path, as difficult as it may be, but we must, by end of this term, write down in the book of history that yes, the Agricultural Committee came with record bills to change the destiny of farmers in this country, because we are aware, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have what it takes, we have the passion, we have the drive, and most importantly, our committee is composed of highly competent and passionate senators who want to make a change in the history of this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I sit down, it is important to point out the Kenya Kwanza government is committed to ensuring that it puts structures in places, including industries and processing, aggregated processing plants, so that we can be able to add value. We know mung bean, after it has been harvested, the only thing you need to do is sort it out, package it, and it's ready for export, it's ready for the shelf life, and we know it has a long shelf life. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would want to take this opportunity even to urge this, my colleagues, even from the minority side, we must support what can change the destiny of our people. And that is, one of them is this finance bill, Mr. Speaker, sir. Because once we are able to raise the taxes, once we are able to put money in the government coffers, we'll be able also to inject much more resources so that we can develop infrastructure, and most importantly, the aggregated county development and processing centers, which I think will be a game changer. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I support.
Thank you very much, Senator Wamatinga. Senator Karungo Thangwa Paul.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this great opportunity to rise and support this bill by my good friend, Senator for Kitui, Senator Wambua. Mr. Speaker, when I read this bill, first of all, it hit me and I asked myself, why just dengu? Why can't we just throw in beans, njahe, peas, and everything in it? And then I realized, Mr. Speaker, when you specialize on something, sometimes it's not good to mix you with other people who are doing different things. And so, Mr. Speaker, I saw it is fit for us to discuss mung beans alone, because we have coffee, which has its own law, we have tea, which has its own law, we were discussing cotton the other day, so I think this is the way to go. Mr. Speaker, when I did my research on the issue of dengue, I was asking myself, because I didn't know, where it comes from. And I realized that 95% of dengue comes from Kitui, Makueni, Tharaka Nithi, Machakos, Meru, and Embu. So that is a place where this dengue comes from, Mr. Speaker. And so we need this law. And for us to have this law, the only problem I have with this law, Mr. Speaker, which the Senator for Kitui should note, is the creation of these committees, Mr. Speaker. I don't know why, I don't know whether it's a template. So many laws create committees. And Mr. Speaker, the reason why I'm raising this issue is because the creation of committees without knowing is a creation of cartels, Mr. Speaker. The moment you create a committee to focus on a free market that was free before, then you have given power to a few people to manage a whole group, Mr. Speaker. But what can be done? The county governments, they do have channels, they do have departments, they do have employees, they do have extension officers. I think we should have the county government to come up with a way to manage the whole process, rather than just formation of a committee of a few individuals. And the committee says we need to include somebody who is in this business. The moment you get that person who is doing that business and you uplift them above everybody else, now that is where the cartels begins, Mr. Speaker. Ask those people who are in the coffee industry. When you form a body that is supposed to do a certain task that was not done before, or that anybody is supposed to do, you give power to some people who, if they do not have the business or the production, or they do not have the farming of dengue at heart, they will use that opportunity to form that cartelism or cartel that deters others from growing this dengue, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the bill itself, it is tasking the Council of Governors to make sure the counties improve the production. That is a good thing, Mr. Speaker, because agriculture is devolved. And that is good because we, being an agricultural nation, I think the counties should be tasked, forced, pushed to make sure that they improve on agriculture, Mr. Speaker. But when they do that, they need to do research. Research in the sense where they're going to have this market. Research in the sense, how do we benefit, other than nutritional value of dengue, what are the other benefits? Maybe it is medicinal, Mr. Speaker, and you never know. Because I was just reading around and I saw that it helps in weight loss. I don't know. I mean, we need them to do research. It helps in lowering your cholesterol. I don't know, Mr. Speaker. I just read an article. But if they do this research and they certify, Mr. Speaker, I believe everybody will be going to these shops and say, I want to do dengue because it is preventing heart diseases. It is preventing, it is fighting cancer, Mr. Speaker. That is an article that was online that gave me this information. But is it true, Mr. Speaker? We are asking these county governments and the governors and this government of ours to do research and certify or ascertain these claims so that people will have an idea of what are the benefits of dengue. Of course, it's food, but we need to know. I have a friend of mine, Mr. Speaker, who goes to Uji joints. He knows all the Uji joints in Kiambu. And the only reason he goes there is because he was told, if you take this unji, it will give you some powers. I don't want to go to that direction, Mr. Speaker, but I do understand, you understand what I mean. So maybe this dengue has the same. And if you go to Yaya Center, without promoting the shop, Mr. Speaker, there's a shop there, just close to the building, not exactly the building. They're selling a Chinese product, and they do have dengue juice, Mr. Speaker. And I hope the senator for Kitui is listening to this. Maybe tomorrow I can go to that shop and bring you dengue juice. I had to buy it and drink it, and it was a good one. So this is what the county government should do to give value addition to these products, Mr. Speaker. And you remember in our budget, the budget that was passed, that was read the other day, every county will benefit with an aggregation center, Mr. Speaker. These aggregation centers is where the farmers will be taking their produce for it to have value addition, for it to be packed. And you know, Mr. Speaker, as much as Senator Sifuna was talking about, we should not talk about the finance bill. I mean, these aggregation centers wouldn't be available without the finances. And these finances won't be available without the finance bill. So I think Senator for Nandi was right to link in the finance bill on this issue of Mung, because even the farmers themselves from Kitui, Makueni, Tharaka-Nithi and Machakos, they need markets to sell this produce. In our budget, or the budget that was read by the CS Treasury, 181 markets are going to be built, Mr. Speaker. We cannot have 181 markets without the finances. We cannot have the finances without the finance bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we need the counties to train these farmers. And by training them, not only in the ways of farming, in the ways of producing it, even in the conservation of it, how to keep it from the pests, you know, weevils and everything else, Mr. Speaker. So when it comes to promotion of Mung bean, Mr. Speaker, I do support this bill. It is a very good bill. And I believe all we need to do is copy-paste and introduce other other serious when it comes to coming up with the new laws. And Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, the counties are supposed to register the growers, Mr. Speaker. I think this is a good step towards understanding who farms this kind of product, what scale. Is it just a small farm? Is it a big farm? And you know, Mr. Speaker, when the county has data, it will be able to know who they distribute the fertilizer to. We have the subsidized fertilizer. Of course, again, which is in the budget that require finances, the finances that were supposed to be gotten from the finance bill. And so that's why we are telling Senator for Kitui, this finance bill is going to assist even the farmers whom we are talking about here, the farmers, the dengue farmers. So what I was trying to say, Mr. Speaker, with data, the county government will be able to know whom to give this fertilizer. Right now, if you ask them, they don't know. They don't even know whether those farmers they give have crops. How big is the farm? Everybody is given a sack of it, which is about 50 kgs or 70 kgs, I don't know. But when you go home, maybe they have 50 by 100, another one has 10 acres. So with the data, they'll be able to know who requires what, Mr. Speaker. And the issue of licensing, and that was my issue when I said about the committee. When you have a committee that gives these licenses, when you have a committee that has to scrutinize whose dengue has to go to which market, now they'll start talking about grading. There'll be grade A, grade B, grade C. Just the way they do with coffee. They say there is grade this, grade that, but when you go to the supermarket, have you ever asked grade A coffee? You just buy coffee and you go home. So I think the best thing is to make sure that we do not form a committee that comes up with this kind of regulations that will hinder the purpose of this bill. So licensing, Mr. Speaker, is very important for traders and, of course, processors. This, again, is to control quality and to know who is doing what so that our farmers do not get oppressed. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I think I've given out all my contribution. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Thank you, Senator Karungo. Senator Commissioner John Kinyua Nderitu.
Asanti Bwana Spika kunipa fursa hii. Kuanzia mwanzo nataka kumpongeza Senator Enoch Wambua kwa kuleta mswada huu, Bwana Spika, mswada wa ndengu, Bwana Spika. Nikimpa heko na kongole, wakulima wa ndengu walikuwa hawajulikani vizuri, kwa sababu nimesikiza hata maseneta wote waliokuwa wakiongea walisema hata hawakujua ndengu kwa Kiingereza ni nini. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Enoch, nataka kupongeza kwa sababu wakulima walionekana ni wakulima wa kahawa, wakulima majani chai, wakulima wa mahindi, wakulima wa pareto na wakulima wa pamba. Nataka kukushukuru kwa kuwapa hadhi wakulima wa ndengu. Na Bwana Spika, nikiangalia mswada huu wote niuangalie kwa kindani, kile ambacho kimefanywa na Senator wa Kitui amefanya kitu kizuri kusema ya kwamba sasa ukulima wa ndengu ameufanya ukawa kilimo biashara, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu mambo yote ambayo yametajwa hapa, Bwana Spika, yanazingatia kuleta gharama nafuu ya ukulima wa ndengu, Bwana Spika. Na Bwana Spika, ni vizuri ijulikane wazi kwamba ukiangalia, Bwana Spika, mambo yote ambayo yametajwa hapa, naona Bwana Spika anasema ya kwamba kutaangaliwa ni mbegu gani ambazo zitakazotumiwa, ni mbegu gani, mbegu ambazo ni za hali ya juu ambazo utafiti tayari umefanywa, Bwana Spika. Anataja kusema ya kwamba, Bwana Spika, ni mpaka mbegu zenyewe ziwe zimeidhinishwa. Anaendelea kusema ya kwamba mbolea, Bwana Spika, iangaliwe vizuri. Ukiangalia tena anasema ya kwamba hata mchanga kwa wale wakulima unaangaliwa, ndio kunajulikana ni mchanga gani unafaa ambao utaweza kutumika kwa ukuzaji wa ndengu, Bwana Spika. Hakomei hapo Bwana Spika, anaendelea kwa kusema ya kwamba kuangaliwe na kuwekwe mikakati ya kutosha ndio kuweze kuangaziwa kama ni mambo ya kwekwe ipiganwe na kwekwe, na anaonyeshana vizuri Bwana Spika vile ambavyo hayo mambo yanapaswa kufanya. Bwana Spika, hakomei hapo, anasema ya kwamba soko ya hawa wakulima wa ndengu inapaswa iangaliwe na ilindwe Bwana Spika, kwa sababu wakati mwingi ukiangalia katika ukulima, mkulima kazi yake Bwana Spika ni kulima. Baada ya kulima, basi wale walagai ambao huwa katikati ya mkulima na yule ambaye atakayetumia chakula hiki anaingilia kati. Unapata ya kwamba Bwana Spika, mkulima anagandamizwa kwa sababu hata bei anayeuza bidhaa yake Bwana Spika ni bei ambayo ni bei hafifu Bwana Spika. Unampata sasa huyu mkulima hawezi hata kujikimu kimaisha Bwana Spika. Ndiposa nikasema ya kwamba mswada huu nikiuangalia kindani ni kilimo biashara, na nataka kumshukuru seneta kwa sababu amezingatia haya mambo. Anaendelea kwa kusema ya kwamba kuna paswa kufanywe utafiti wa kutosha na kujulikane kabisa ni wakulima wangapi ni wanaokuza hii mimea, na kujulikana ni wakulima wangapi Bwana Spika, itakuwa ni rahisi sana kujua basi wakati tunatafuta soko zetu, tunatafuta soko za kiasi gani ya ndengu yetu. Bwana Spika, nilimsikiza Profesa Kamara akimuuliza maswali mwanafunzi wake Seneta Enoch Wambua, akimuuliza itawezekanaje sasa, kwa sababu mipaka imefunguliwa, ndegu zinaweza zikatoka Tanzania, zikatoka Uganda, zikauzwa hapa kwetu Kenya. Lakini Bwana Spika, nikiangalia mswada huu vile ambavyo umetengenezwa, na naona ya kwamba yeye vile ambavyo anajaribu kufanya Bwana Spika ni kuonyesha ya kwamba ukulima wetu utakuwa umefanywa na bei nafuu. Kwa hivyo hata ndengu zozote zikiletwa kutoka nchi jirani Bwana Spika hasitaweza kushindana kwa bei Bwana Spika na ndengu zetu. Kwa hivyo wataona ni kazi bure Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo hata hana shida yoyote na ndengu ambazo zinatoka nchi nje. Vile anavyofanya ni ya kuonyesha ya kwamba kwa sababu tutakuwa tukijua kiasi cha dengu ambacho tuko nacho Bwana Spika, wale wanahusishwa Bwana Spika, kwa sababu anaendelea kusema kwamba Bwana Spika, kujulikane wale wanunuzi watakao kununua kwa idadi kubwa ni akina nani Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, sina shaka pangu rohoni mswada huu nikiuangalia Bwana Spika umezingatia mambo mengi, na namshukuru zaidi kwa sababu haikufikiriwa. Hata nimsikia Karungu Wadhango akijaribu kusema pengine kungeongezwa, alijaribu kujiuliza kwa nini hakukuwekwa maharagwe ya kawaida. Lakini maharagwe yanajulikana, lakini Bwana Spika, na nataka kukubaliana na yeye kwa sababu alisema hakutaka kuleta kwa sababu angetaka kuleta mimea ile mingine kwa sababu italeta vurugu, na alitaka huu mmea wa ndengu ubaki peke yake Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, mimi nasimama kuunga mkono, na Bwana Spika, hili ni jambo nzuri hasa kwetu Laikipia, kwa sababu tukizingatia haya mambo amesema, na nimeona ametaja ya kwamba kila kaunti wanaweza kuangalia haya mambo kwa kindani. Hata sisi Laikipia tukizingatia kwamba Kitui, ukienda Kitui tunaweza toka sisi Laikipia tuende tuangalie vile wanavyofanya hayo mambo Kitui. Mchanga ni yupi Bwana Spika uko pale Kitui, kwa sababu hata sisi Laikipia tuna wanasayansi ambao katika kaunti yetu waangalie na sisi tuweze tukakuza ndengu Laikipia. Na Bwana Spika, nambari ya wale watakokuwa kuza ndengu Laikipia, kwa sababu ametaja ya kwamba nambari ijulikane, na kusema tu katika kaunti, amesema Kenya nzima kwa jumla, kwa sababu yeye ni senator wa Kenya, nchi ya Kenya Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo hili itakuwa ni jambo nzuri Bwana Spika, itakuwa mwanzo hata sisi kwetu tuweze kusoma kutoka kaunti ya Kitui. Bwana Spika, hii sheria tukiipitisha Bwana Spika na iweze kufanya kazi Bwana Spika, itawasaidia wakulima wa ndengu Bwana Spika, na tunaweza tukaiga hii sheria Bwana Spika. Sisi tuna wakulima ama wafugaji wa ng'ombe Bwana Spika, kwa sababu tukizingatia hizi sheria Bwana Spika, amesema kuhusu utafiti Bwana Spika, hata sisi tufanye utafiti ndio tuweze kupata ni mbegu gani nzuri ya ndume ambao Bwana Spika tunaweza tukawa nayo. Bwana Spika, tufanye utafiti ni chumvi gani sana inaweza kutumika pale kwetu Laikipia ndio tuweze kuongeza mavuno yetu maradufu. Bwana Spika, tukizingatia vile alivyosema, namkumbuka naibu wa rais na Mheshimiwa Karungu Athang'wa ataniunga mkono, kwa sababu hili jambo la majani chai, hili jambo la kahawa limekuwa na hawa nataka kuwaita wakora Bwana Spika, ambao kazi yao ni kuvuna ambapo hawajapanda Bwana Spika. Na hili ndio swala nyeti ambalo najua Seneta Enoch Wambua analizingatia, ndio tuweze kuondoa hawa wanaitwa kwa lugha ya Kiingereza Bwana Spika mabrokers. Na wengine wanaongeza lugha nyingine Bwana Spika, ukinikubalia wanaitwa cartel Bwana Spika. Hawana shamba lolote, hawajalima mahali popote, hawana chochote wanachofanya, kazi yao ni kukaa kungoja Bwana Spika. Na mimi naweza nikawalinganisha na fisi Bwana Spika. Kazi yake ni kumfuata mtu, anaangalia vile mkono unavyoenda, akingoje uanguke Bwana Spika. Hawalimi, hawafanyi chochote, lakini wao ni kuja na kuwalagai wakulima, kwa sababu wakulima hawana mahali pa kuuza mazao yao. Lakini Enoch, na kushukuru kwa sababu umeangazia mambo ya masoko yetu ya watu wa ndengu. Na hili Bwana Spika, hii sheria Bwana Spika, hata sina shaka pangu rohoni kwa nini Seneta Enoch Wambua alichaguliwa mara ya pili. Na mswada huu ukipita Bwana Spika, tena naona, sitaki kusema lakini naona Bwana Spika, kwa sababu macho ni yangu, naona, nikiangalia naona mbali, akienda vivyo hivyo Bwana Spika, Mungu si adhumani, Enoch atakuwa governor wa pale Kitui. Na tunashukuru, maombi ya Mungu, unajua wewe ni Mkristo na unakubaliana na mimi Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo mimi ningependa kusema ya kwamba naunga mkono mswada huu, na nimwambie Mheshimiwa Enoch Wambua, baada ya sisi kuupitisha, ufuatilie vizuri wale wakulima wa ndengu pale Kitui, ndiposa wawe funzo kwetu sisi ambazo tumetoka sehemu zile zingine ambazo hatukuzi ndengu, na pengine tunaweza tukatumia mswada huu Bwana Spika kujua ni vipi hata sisi tunaweza tukakuza ndengu, tukakuza hata mimea ile ingine, ama mimea ile ingine ambayo inakuwa kaunti zetu, hasa kwetu Laikipia, tujue tunaweza kutumia sheria hizi Bwana Spika, tuweze kuwasajili wakulima wetu, kuwapatia mbolea Bwana Spika, na kuweza kuwatafutia soko ya mimea yetu, na waweze kupata faida kwa mimea ambayo wamepanda. Nashukuru Bwana Spika na naunga mkono.
Asante sana Senator Kinyua. Senator Esther Okenyuri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. This is a very interesting time to actually be alive and listen to such a bill be discussed on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, when lawmakers come together, they solve challenges facing a country. And this evening, we are yet seeing Senator Wambua, the Kitui Senator, come up with a bill which is going to address so many other challenges and be part of the issues Kenya is dealing with as a country. Mr. Speaker, I want to start by noting that the mung bean is an actually very important type of legume, which is very popular even among the members of the Adventist family. That's the Seventh-day Adventist faithfuls. Because we are, as one of them, we are actually encouraged to partake in this high protein content legume, which as a plant has several other benefits. When I actually check, it contains benefits which are supporting pregnant mothers, children, and mothers who are also lactating. When I look at this, it's a very good opportunity for women across the country. Once county governments embrace this crop as a cash crop, and even for the smallholder farmers, it's going to open up so many other avenues for women and young people and children to benefit. Mr. Speaker, I saw on the section where the senator talks about a committee being established. I hope in that committee there will be representation of women and young people, and in the registration process of registering these farmers, that process needs someone who's very keen and with attention to details. And I think I have a very radical proposition on that one. I think young people should be given a priority, and deliberately that should be included in this bill so that when it actually ascends to being law, that's not overlooked, because sometimes when implementing, the issue of including young people or women is neither here or there, and all the time an excuse is given that the law was silent on this matter. Mr. Speaker, I also want to note that in as much as this is popular in counties like Embu, Meru, in fact, I see they have special names for those projects just to motivate people to practice farming of mung beans. I think other counties, like the county of my origin where I come from, this is a good thing that will also open their eyes to embrace this kind of legume, so that we are not just used to the bananas, avocados, and other long-term growing plants. When you actually look at the mung bean, it takes a very short time to grow, very little productivity costs related to it. And we as a country are coming from a situation where most of our people or most of our citizens are low-class people. So I think this will be an affordable crop for them to plant and participate in improving their lives. Mr. Speaker, I also want to bring to the attention of members that this the mung bean, I know when county governments embrace it fully, we are going to see a rush into embracing this, and we might be having very many of those beans that have been harvested. Hope we will have a way of looking at the post-harvest so that we do not have the beans be destroyed by weevils or other adverse conditions then that the different regions face. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, this government has given priority to subsidize fertilizer, which for the first time has gone to the very lowest level of the different areas where we come from. And I'm saying that because I also got reports from my own village of farmers who got access to this fertilizer. So you can imagine with such kind of incentives to boost agriculture, we have no reason for people not participating in agriculture because it's the backbone of our economy. And this will make it lucrative even for the young people. I see you have mentioned the embracing of current modern technology. That's where most of our young people lie, and they'll be coming up with their innovations. There need to be modalities of siphoning such kind of ideas to the different county governments so that we are having county governments that are taking up this project fully. Mr. Speaker, this will also actually registering the farmers who will be undertaking the farming of mung bean will make it easier to mobilize these farmers into cooperatives, because when they do it in their smallholder capacity, sometimes they're not able to apply for loans and other incentives that come with farming. So with such a bill, we are going to have a provision that will allow the small farmers have circles that will give them access to loans and other facilities that are already in existence. And for the young people, I'll be looking forward for them uptaking more funds from the youth fund, because the other week I visited the youth fund, I realized some regions, young people completely do not take up this money, and it's money that is at an affordable rate. Once you have an organized group, you can actually repay. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to actually support Senator Wambua by coming with such a bill at this time. And decisions made by this House are life and death decisions. So for this one, this is a life decision, and I commend Senator Wambua for a well thought out proposal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Veronica.
Huchagui familia yako, ni zawadi ya Mungu kwako kama ulivyozawadi kwao. Iwapo unakohoa, unahisi uchungu kwenye kifua, uchovu kila wakati, joto jingi mwilini, unakosa hamu ya kula au kupoteza uzito haraka bila kukusudia, na kutokwa na jasho jingi usiku, waweza kuwa waugua TB. Nenda hospitalini ukapimwe. Ikibainika ya kwamba ni TB, utapewa dawa, na ukimeza vizuri ulivyoshauriwa na daktari, utapona. TB yaweza kuangamiza jamii yako. Usikubali. Matibabu ni bila malipo katika hospitali zote za serikali.
Nimeona medical records zangu all over the internet, plastered by some bloggers. Can you imagine? No country mzima inajua kuhusu status zangu. Kila mtu anajua. Mlipatia nani status zangu? Mlionyesha nani medical records zangu nyinyi?
This could lead to discrimination of a data subject. As a data controller, you have a responsibility to make sure that the information you collect, such as sensitive information, is secure.
Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwako na ofisi ya Data Protection Commissioner. Cheza Loto Moto.
1,100.
Kwa majina naitwa Alex Odur, natoka Kamulu. Na show leo imekuwa poa. Nilikuja na confidence nikijua naenda kuwin. Na nimewin 100,000 ndio hizi hapa. Wale wanacheza Loto Moto waendelee, ni kitu ya ukweli. Loto Moto, endelea kucheza kila siku.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2,000. Lipa kisha subiri draw.
Zima na uwashe futa na GoTV Max. Ukiwa na GoTV Max, unapata kuona timu zako za La Liga na Serie A zikicheza live. Hapa pia utafurahia more than 55 local and international channels. Jipatie raha pamoja na familia yako kwa bei poa. Usimiss out. Download the My GoTV app now to get or upgrade to GoTV Max today. GoTV. Love it.
Iwapo unakohoa, unahisi uchungu kwenye kifua, uchovu kila wakati, joto jingi mwilini, unakosa hamu ya kula au kupoteza uzito haraka bila kukusudia, na kutokwa na jasho jingi usiku, waweza kuwa waugua TB.
Uliambiwa unyoe ndefu na pato unakuja na hizo ndefu hapa hivi. Na wao uliambiwa uchukue litaya na pato huko hapa. Sasa hiyo unakoja tu. Sio ni kipula mheshimiwa.
Mimi najuaje?
Ndio nakwambia vile kulingana na vile mimi namjuanga.
Na kielele ni nini kuleta kwa
TB yaweza kuangamiza jamii yako. Usikubali. Matibabu ni bila malipo katika hospitali zote za serikali.
Not just for Naivasha, not just for the county of Nakuru, but also for Kenya. We are witnessing the 70th edition of Safari Rally. This is the 70th year. We've been doing this for 70 years. We have been doing the World Rally Championships for 50 years. It is a wonderful moment for us. It is a wonderful moment for the spectators. It's a wonderful moment for the people who are coming to watch. It is a great opportunity for the people of the county of Nakuru. It is a moment for the people of Naivasha, the business people, the people who are involved in many aspects of putting together this rally, the people who are working here, the rally drivers, their support teams, many people who have come from across the world. as part of the organizers, as part of the teams that are assisting the rally drivers. And it is a great moment for all of us as a country. It is much more exciting because KBC is beaming it across Kenya and globally. So again, congratulations to you.
All right, thank you. The global tourism market is expected to rebound to pre-pandemic levels by the end of this year. And according to the United Nations World Tourism Organization, the market is expected to see business worth about $3.5 trillion. Kenya is angling for a piece of the pie.
We've done well in terms of recovery, and we're putting forward strategies so that we can rebound back to 2019 levels and numbers, which was 2.4.
This week on Inside Government, we are talking to Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism, Penina Malonza. She will be explaining to us the strategies that Kenya has put in place to tap 5 million visitors by the year 2027. Watch the conversation right here on KBC Channel 1 with me, O'Brien Kimani.
Are you a holder of unclaimed financial assets? Surrender unclaimed financial assets today and avoid the last-minute rush. Take advantage of penalties and fines waiver ending June 30th, 2023. Do not wait for the June 30th, 2023 deadline. Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority. Receive, safeguard, reunite.
Huchagui familia yako, ni zawadi ya Mungu kwako kama ulivyozawadi kwao. Iwapo unakohoa, unahisi uchungu kwenye kifua, uchovu kila wakati, joto jingi mwilini, unakosa hamu ya kula au kupoteza uzito haraka bila kukusudia na kutokwa na jasho jingi usiku, waweza kuwa waugua TB. Nenda hospitalini ukapimwe. Ikibainika ya kwamba ni TB, utapewa dawa, na ukimeza vizuri ulivyoshauriwa na daktari, utapona. TB yaweza kuangamiza jamii yako. Usikubali. Matibabu ni bila malipo katika hospitali zote za serikali.
Cheza Loto Moto 1,100.
Kwa majina naitwa Alex Odur, natoka Kamulu. Na show leo imekuwa poa. Nilikuja na confidence nikijua naenda kuwin. Na nimewin 100,000 ndio hizi hapa. Wale wanacheza Loto Moto waendelee, ni kitu ya ukweli. Loto Moto, endelea kucheza kila siku.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2,000. Lipa kisha subiri draw.
Hi, I'm Tash Tundu. I'm driving in the WRC this year under Talanta Hella with the other girls' teams. My navigator is Chantal Young. We are on an N10 Subaru. To all the fans out there, please come and support us. To all the ladies out there, make sure you support us. And it's being shown live on KBC Channel 1 throughout the rally.
What if he's not really dead?
He'd be very shocked to see his greedy brothers.
I'm not dead, Alice. You are to me. Do you think Dad had a will?
Of course he did.
Na kila mtu anajua nini anapata. Na will ilikuwa ni ya watoto.
Iko wapi will? Sasa ona aibu. Joel akiamka sasa hivi atafikiria nini juu yako?
Mom needs you guys now.
You know, right now she's very vulnerable and gullible, I must say.
I need you to do everything in your power to get back with him.
What's in it for me?
Getting your husband back, of course.
Iwapo unakohoa, unahisi uchungu kwenye kifua, uchovu kila wakati, joto jingi mwilini, unakosa hamu ya kula au kupoteza uzito haraka bila kukusudia na kutokwa na jasho jingi usiku, waweza kuwa waugua TB.
Imagine Posire Moruve in the United States of America.
Guys, ile siku nitafika majuu. Hey, I will come back with a figure to die for. You guys won't even be able to recognize me.
We'll have to lose that accent. Otherwise, wasungu hata kuelewa.
TB yaweza kuangamiza jamii yako. Usikubali. Matibabu ni bila malipo katika hospitali zote za serikali.
화가 살짝 나는데?
저번에 한 대 맞기로 한 거 미리 한 대 맞자?
미치겠다. 아, 근 10년 중에 제일 웃긴 얘기네. 문 과장님, 신문님, 여기서 이러시면 안 돼요.
맞아 있어.